Marvel, I inherited the Shadow Realm. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 1. I inherited the Shadow Kingdom. In a certain eastern region, a desert war zone, in the middle of a dim cave at the base of the Ten Rings gang, a white man slowly woke up. The intense pain made the man frown instantly and cry out in pain. Where am I? The man sat up slowly, but felt that something was holding him back. He reached out to pull out the oxygen tube in his nose and looked at the iron lump connected to the wire on his chest. The man was confused. At this time, a voice came from the side. If I were you, I wouldn't move around. You have a piece of shrapnel in your body, very close to your heart. If you didn't have this thing, you would be dead. Hearing this, the man's face suddenly changed. He didn't know whether what the old man in front of him said was true or false, but he didn't dare to gamble. Just as he was about to ask more, a sharp pain suddenly hit his mind. At the same time, a series of memory fragments flashed quickly in his mind like a movie. A few minutes later, the pain in the man's head eased, but his face became even uglier. It was mixed with various emotions such as weirdness and surprise. He just slept normally, but he never thought that he would travel through time. When he woke up, he also traveled through time and became the famous Iron Man, Tony Stark. As a super popular character of Marvel, Tony Stark is world renowned and is known as an existence that can rival gods with the power of mortals. Realizing this, Tony was happy at first. He had an unhappy life in his previous life and had no worries. Now that he has traveled through time and space and become the famous Iron Man, what else can he be dissatisfied with? However, his joy did not last long, and his face soon became ugly. The reason why Tony Stark can rival gods is not because of some mutation, but because of his smart brain. Although he has replaced Tony's identity now, he has not inherited his smart brain. And if he guessed correctly, he is now in the plot of the first Iron Man, where Tony Stark was kidnapped. At this time, Tony Stark has not even made the Iron Man suit. In other words, although he inherited Tony's identity, he also killed the existence of Iron Man. After all, he was a good young man in his previous life, but he couldn't make an iron suit. If that was all, Tony would feel uncomfortable, but not sad, because he didn't have much interest in being a superhero. It's not bad to be an ordinary billionaire. However, he is now kidnapped, and the kidnappers are about to threaten him to make missiles. But what kind of missiles can he make? Once those terrorist kidnappers know the situation, can he still survive? I'm afraid they will chop him up and feed him to the dogs. Thinking of this, Tony panicked. Just when he was in a state of panic, a cold electronic synthesized sound suddenly sounded in his mind. Ding, you have become the successor of the Shadow Kingdom. The Dark Lottery system is at your service. Name, Tony Stark. Gender, male. Identity, successor of the Shadow Kingdom. Ability, none. Newbie gift package, to be opened. Number of drawers 0. Mission release, escape mission. Introduction. Your current situation is very dangerous. You may be chopped up and fed to dogs by the kidnappers at any time. Please escape from here as soon as possible and get out of danger. Mission reward, +1 draw times. Control authority of the Shadow Kingdom Ninja Corps. Tony was slightly stunned as he watched the series of information appear before his eyes. His face kept changing. Finally, a trace of ecstasy surged into his heart, causing the corners of his mouth to curl up with a look of joy. It is said that a golden finger is necessary for time travel, and netizens are not lying to me. Although, he may not be able to make an iron suit, which will make the world lose an Iron Man. But with the help of the system, he will only become a more powerful existence than Iron Man. Fortunately, he was not overwhelmed by the surprise, and knew what the current priority was. Open the novice gift package. Ding, congratulations on getting 10 ninja soldiers. Ding, congratulations on getting the authority to travel through the Shadow Kingdom. After the brief prompt, Tony only felt that he had an inexplicable power on him. As long as he drove this power, he could summon 10 ninja soldiers and enter and exit the Shadow Kingdom freely. Tony looked around, and the old man who had just spoken had left without knowing when. Calming down, Tony quietly felt the power and secretly called out to the ninja soldiers. "Come out." The moment he finished speaking, a black mist appeared in front of him. When the black mist dissipated, 10 figures wrapped in black ninja clothes appeared in front of him. Unlike ordinary ninjas, they were all black, including the exposed palms. The only thing that was different from black was their skull eyes, which exuded the desire to kill. Looking at them, Tony looked at them carefully, as if he was looking at some amazing masterpiece. In the Shadow Kingdom, there are 9 major Shadow Corps, and the Ninja Corps is one of them. They may not be the most powerful among the Shadow Corps, but they are definitely the most comprehensive in the Shadow Corps. Whether in battle or life, they can easily help. Compared with fighting, the Shadow Corps has a more powerful ability, immortality. As soldiers born in darkness, as long as they die, they will be reborn in the Shadow Kingdom. Moreover, they are absolutely loyal to their masters, and are the best subordinates. According to the introduction in the anime, the Shadow Kingdom, where the Shadow Core lives can connect all parts of the world, so can he escape from here with the help of the Shadow Kingdom? With this thought, Tony was immediately moved and immediately ordered, "Take me into the Shadow Kingdom." As soon as he finished speaking, 2 shadow ninjas came to him. One of them put a hand on his shoulder and sank into the ground with him. As Tony disappeared, the shadow ninjas he summoned also sank into the ground. Time passed by, and suddenly, on the ground, Tony's figure appeared again in the cave, gasping for breath, with a trace of fear in his eyes. He thought of the convenience of the Shadow Kingdom, but forgot to consider the danger of the Shadow Kingdom. As a kingdom of dark creatures, the Shadow Kingdom is not only home to the Shadow Core, but also powerful dark creatures. Although Tony is the heir of the Shadow Kingdom, it is only a title, and he has no real power. Now he can only summon 10 ninja soldiers, and this is still the novice gift package given to him by the system. As a living person, breaking into the Shadow Kingdom is like a light in the darkness, extremely dazzling. Tony, who had just entered the Shadow Kingdom, was attacked fiercely by dark creatures before he had time to take a few more glances. If it weren't for the protection of 10 ninja soldiers, his life would have almost been left in the Shadow Kingdom. It seems that I may have to control 10 shadow troops first, and then I can become the real master of the Shadow Kingdom. A bitter smile appeared on the corners of Tony's mouth. He looked at the sunlight outside the cave, and a hint of coldness flashed in his eyes. There is no other way. I can only fight my way out. Chapter 2. A dark and windy night of murder. Tony's voice fell, and his eyes were filled with murderous intent, but soon, he restrained his murderous intent. As a dark camp, the power of the Shadow Core is not affected by day and night, but at night, they can exert stronger strength. At present, he can only summon 10 dark ninjas. Just in case, Tony decided to wait until night falls before taking action. Having made up his mind, Tony soon fell into a deep sleep. He had just woken up and experienced a series of great sorrows and joys. His mind was full of fatigue and he needed more rest. As for his own safety, he didn't need to worry about it for the time being. Since the kidnappers wanted him to help them build missiles, he was temporarily safe and didn't need to worry about them too much. After sleeping for 2 hours, when Tony woke up again, the sun was about to set. The afterglow of the sunset sprinkled on the entrance of the cave, reflecting the beauty of the dusk. A sound of footsteps suddenly came from the entrance of the cave, and the old man who saw it during the day, walked in with a meal. Looking at Tony sitting on the bed, the old man said, "Are you hungry? Eat something. Although it doesn't taste very good, I think you need it." As he spoke, he put the food in front of Tony, and went back to his own business. Looking at the dark food in the bowl, Tony frowned. If the old man hadn't said it was food, he would have thought it was cement. A bowl of grey paste, exuding a sour smell. If there was a choice, Tony would never eat this thing. But he hadn't eaten for a long time. If he didn't replenish his energy, he wasn't sure if he could stand up. After hesitating for a long time, he finally pinched his nose and ate everything in the bowl. Perhaps because of hunger, the food was unpalatable, but not difficult to swallow. When he ate everything in the bowl, he finally recovered a little strength in his body. Only then did he have time to look at the old man. In the plot, this old man seems to be a talent. It was because of his surgery that his predecessor was able to survive and had the opportunity to create an iron suit. Tony was silent for a moment, then said, "Hey, old man, what's your name, and why are you here?" The old man, who was flipping through a book, glanced at him and replied in a calm tone, "Yingson Bogley, I'm a prisoner like you, so don't expect me to save you." Obviously, Yingson thought Tony wanted him to help him escape, so he interrupted Tony's thoughts. Tony didn't mind this and didn't say anything more. If the old man was willing, he wouldn't mind letting the old man follow him when he left. Time passed slowly, and the night became darker and darker. Outside the cave, a black fog emerged. 10 ninja soldiers appeared silently and then quickly disappeared from the spot like ghosts. Tony sat on the bed, looking at the darkness outside the cave, and couldn't help but sigh. It's a dark and windy night, a murderous night. The camp of the 10 Rings gang was not far from the cave, just halfway up the mountain. In order to seal off the cave, their camp was built around the entire mountainside, with tents standing on the mountainside. Although it was dark, the camp of the 10 Commandments gang was still brightly lit. The roar of the generator continued to sound in the dark, and patrol teams wandered around the entire camp. Compared with the general evil forces, their vigilance was outstanding, basically eliminating the possibility of being attacked. If the general army attacked at night, the members of the 10 Commandments gang could react quickly. However, what they are facing today is not an ordinary army, but a ninja corps from the Shadow Kingdom. Although their number is small, only 10 people, the strength of each person has long exceeded the limit of human beings. The camp was brightly lit, but it was impossible to dispel all the darkness. Not long after, a patrol team patrolled into a dark area. At the moment when this team entered the darkness, a pair of scalded eyes suddenly appeared. Suddenly, the members of the patrol team changed their faces, and they were about to speak one by one. Puff, 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 but before they could make a sound, a series of sounds of cutting meat by blades cutting through throats were heard. The members of the entire patrol team felt a sharp pain in their throats, and their vitality quickly faded away, and they fell to the ground one after another, turning into corpses. As these people fell, the Black Shadow ninjas slowly walked out of the darkness, dragging a corpse into the darkness. Soon, the scene was cleaned up, and there was not even a trace of blood left. The whole process was silent, and the cooperation between the Black Shadow ninjas was tacit, and the killing slowly blossomed in the darkness. What happened in this corner did not attract the attention of the 10 Commandments gang at all. The Black Shadow ninjas continued to hide in the darkness, killing the patrol teams and the camp bit by bit. As long as someone walked into the darkness, no one came out again. This situation continued until midnight, and someone from the 10 Commandments gang finally found something wrong. Mountain Wolf, Nightingale, please reply if you hear me, please reply if you hear me. In a tent, a bald man holding a walkie-talkie said in a solemn tone. He is the captain of the patrol team, responsible for overall coordination. Just now, he suddenly received a report from the patrol team members that the patrol team seemed to be missing several teams. The bald man's first reaction was that it was impossible. His team members were all strong and had undergone professional military training. Even if something happened, it would not be silent. But after he called several times in succession, he still did not get any response. He had to believe that something happened. An enemy sneaked into the camp. Realizing this, the bald man quickly said, "Sound the alarm, there is an enemy invasion." After the words fell, a member beside him quickly pressed the alarm button, and suddenly a burst of rapid alarms sounded in the camp. The camp, which had been in silence, instantly came alive, and noisy sounds rang out from each tent. Those members of the 10 Rings gang who had been resting quickly put on their equipment and walked out of the tent. At the same time, the Black Shadow ninjas who were only hiding in the dark to hunt, scattered at the moment the alarm sounded. Without anyone's instructions, they started killing in the camp. As a killing weapon, the Black Shadow ninjas have completely integrated killing into their instincts. Whether it was hiding in the darkness to kill at the beginning or the scattered killing now, it was all their subconscious behavior. They would make the most advantageous killing behavior according to the current environment. Soon, many members of the 10 Rings gang had their throats cut by the cold blade just after they walked out of the tent and had no time to meet up with their companions. Chapter 3, The Killing Feast of Ninja Soldiers. Corpses fell to the ground one after another, and killing broke out in the camp. Many people saw the figure of the Black Shadow Ninja flashing by, and they shouted and cursed. "Fuck, what is that? There are enemies. Shoot, shoot." Instantly, gunshots rang out, and countless bullets poured towards the Black Shadow Ninja. Looking at this scene, the scarlet light in the Black Shadow Ninja's eyes became more vigorous, and the ninja sword in his hand kept waving. There were clanging sounds, and he actually used the sword to chop off a large number of bullets. Such a scene made everyone in the Ten Commandments gang look terrified. But the Black Shadow Ninjas did not hesitate at all, and they flashed and rushed directly to the crowd. The ghostly speed exceeded everyone's imagination. Before they could react, the Black Shadow Ninja had already disappeared into the crowd, setting off endless killing. The sound of flesh piercing rang out, and many people fell to the ground without even having time to scream. Blood flowed from their throats, gradually dyeing the ground red. This scene was not an isolated case, but was played out throughout the camp. The 10 Black Shadow Ninjas completely turned into the gods of death in the dark, and no one could stop them. All the militants could only watch death come upon them, and die with endless fear. In the cave, Dr. Inson, who had already fallen asleep, was awakened by the sound of gunfire outside the cave. He sat up, and looked at the direction of the cave entrance with a serious face. Not knowing what had happened, he turned his head, and glanced at Tony next to him. Seeing Tony staring at the cave entrance with a trance, Inson couldn't help but say, "Hey, what happened outside?" Hearing this, Tony glanced at him and nodded. "I know, my rescuer is here." "Rescue you?" Dr. Inson's mouth twitched, and he shook his head and stopped talking. When Tony was sent here, everything on him was destroyed, so it was useless. Even if he had a locator, it was impossible for anyone, except the 10 rings, to find this place. So, he didn't believe what Tony said. But he didn't say anything. Tony stood up and took the initiative to say, "Let's go. It should be over soon. We can go out." A trace of suspicion appeared on Dr. Inson's face. Tony ignored him, holding the battery in front of him, slowly stood up, and walked out of the cave. Seeing this scene, Dr. Inson's face changed instantly. He was a smart man, and that was why he didn't believe Tony. But when Tony took the initiative to walk out, he wavered. As the head of Stark Industries and a well-known genius, he didn't believe that Tony would be a fool. Now the outside is obviously in chaos, and he dared to go out at this time, so what he said just now is very likely to be true. Someone really came to save him. Thinking of this, Dr. Inson's expression changed, and he quickly caught up with Tony's footsteps. The two left the cave, and walked towards the middle of the mountain. In the silent night, screams could be heard from time to time. As the two approached, the screams became less and less, and in the end they were almost inaudible. Gulp. Dr. Inson swallowed hard, feeling a little flustered. He hadn't noticed it at first, but now he suddenly realized it. The gunfire in the camp was not intense. If the 10 rings were attacked by the army or other armed forces, the gunfire should be very intense. But apart from the gunfire he heard in the cave just now, he had only heard scattered gunfire so far. It didn't sound like two armed forces were exchanging fire. So who else was attacking the 10 rings besides the armed forces? What was the screaming in the camp about? People are afraid of imagining things. Thinking about it, Dr. Inson, a Christian, was instantly filled with fear. A cross appeared in his hand at some point, and he held it tightly. His eyes were focused on Tony, trying to find a sense of security from him. In this way, the two of them, one in front and one behind, quickly stepped into the camp. Ugh. A vomiting sound suddenly came out of Dr. Inson's mouth. Standing at the edge of the camp, looking at the broken limbs and arms in the camp, as well as the bodies on the ground, he couldn't help but vomit. A look of shock filled his face. Even though his physiological reaction made him feel uncomfortable, he still felt unbelievable when he saw the scenes in the camp. "How did you do it?" Dr. Inson said with a trembling voice. The corners of Tony's mouth curled up immediately. "Guess." After saying that, he ignored the corpses on the ground and walked towards the center of the camp. After controlling the Black Shadow Ninja, his mentality also changed inadvertently. The most obvious point is that the sure scene that ordinary people can't stand at the moment can't cause any waves for him. Walking in the blood and corpses, Dr. Inson followed him with a pale face. Soon, the two came to the tent in the center of the camp and found a satellite phone on the messy table. Seeing this, Tony couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Dealing with these members of the Ten Rings gang is only the first step. More importantly, how should they leave this desert is the key. The importance of satellite phones is self-evident. Holding the phone, Tony was about to call Pepper, but when he was about to press the dial button, he couldn't help but stop. If he remembered correctly, the mastermind behind his kidnapping this time seemed to be his uncle Abadia. Moreover, Abadia wanted him to die in this desert. It was just that the Ten Rings wanted the missile, so Tony was spared. As the second in command of Stark Industries, Abadia would definitely know once Pepper used the power of the Stark Group. How could Abadia, who wanted him dead, watch him return to Stark Industries? I'm afraid he would contact other armed forces as soon as possible to assassinate him a second time. Tony was naturally not afraid, but it was a waste of time. He needed to leave here as soon as possible and return to China. Although he had killed all the kidnappers, the system did not determine that the mission was completed. Perhaps he had to return to the country safely to truly escape. So Tony deleted the number, re-entered another string of numbers and dialed it out. Soon, with a beep, the call was connected, and a slightly tired voice came from the phone. "This is Rod. What's up?" "Rod, it's me, Tony. Fuck, where are you now?" Rod became excited instantly after hearing Tony's voice. The US military was in a state of panic because of Tony's disappearance. As Tony's bodyguard and good friend, Rod couldn't sleep for several days. How could he not be excited when he suddenly heard Tony's voice? He put the phone away from his ear and waited for Rod to vent. Tony then spoke again. "I don't know the exact location now. Find someone to track the signal of this phone and pick me up. By the way, remember to be secretive and don't make a sound." Hearing Tony's calm words, Rod quickly calmed down. "What do you mean?" Rod whispered. Being a colonel in the military, he was naturally smart, and he immediately understood the hidden meaning of Tony's words. Tony didn't explain this, but just urged, "Let's talk about it when we meet. Hurry up." "Okay, I got it." Rod hung up the phone and selected 50 elite soldiers overnight, tracking the signal and rushing to the depths of the desert. Chapter 4. Going to hell is his only option. One night passed quickly. When the sun rose the next day, the convoy of Colonel Rhodes and others also followed the signal and arrived at the camp of the Ten Rings gang. Ahem. Colonel Rhodes coughed and waved his hand to disperse the yellow sand in front of him. Looking at the deserted camp in front of him, his face was alert. Fully armed soldiers quickly stepped forward to clear the way, holding guns in their hands and looking alert. At the same time, in the camp, Tony and his friends also heard the sound of cars outside. They walked out of the tent immediately after not sleeping all night. Soon, the two sides met in the camp. "Shit, Tony, you're okay, that's great." Seeing Tony, the alert Colonel Rhodes immediately greeted him with a happy face. 50 fully armed soldiers scattered and began to be on guard. No one found anything unusual. Only Dr. Inson, who had been following Tony, changed his face. He remembered that the camp was full of corpses and blood last night. It was a hell. But now, it's gone. Everything is gone. The camp was clean, not to mention corpses. Even the smell of blood could not be smelled. How could this be possible? Thinking of this, Dr. Inson looked at Tony's back with some fear. What secrets were hidden in this man? Just when he was stunned, Colonel Rhodes also noticed him standing behind Tony and looked him up and down and asked softly, "Tony, who is he?" "A poor man like me." "Oh." Rhodes responded, but obviously did not believe Tony's words. However, he did not pursue it, but asked how Tony escaped. Tony did not have a good explanation for this question, and could only vaguely say, "Last night, the terrorists here evacuated for some reason, and I don't know." After saying that, Tony shrugged helplessly, giving people the feeling that he knew nothing at all. "Really? Then it's really God's blessing. Let's go. Let's leave here first." Colonel Rhodes looked at Tony deeply, his eyes full of suspicion, but because of his relationship with Tony, he didn't want to say it, and he couldn't get to the bottom of it, so he could only expose the matter. Anyway, Tony is fine, which is the best news. The group got on the car without delay. Because they didn't sleep all night, Tony, and Dr. Inson fell asleep soon after getting on the car. Tony still held the huge battery in his arms, which made Colonel Rhodes look sideways all the way. 2 hours later, Tony finally returned to the US military camp, and his tense mind relaxed. As a country with capital first, Tony and the US government are in a stage of friendly cooperation, so Tony is not worried that the US government will be unfavorable to him. Without staying in the camp for too long, Tony soon took Dr. Inson on a military helicopter and headed for New York. As for Colonel Rhodes, he had to stay here for a while because of the mission, so he did not accompany them. After sending Tony away, Rhodes also passed the news of Tony's rescue back to the United States, including the weirdness of the whole incident. As a friend, he would not take the initiative to find out the secrets hidden by Tony. But as a professional soldier, he would not ignore the doubts in this matter. Apart from anything else, the kidnappers spent so much effort to capture Tony and then retreated in a hurry, leaving Tony in the desert. It was unreasonable, no matter how you looked at it. Tony had no idea about Rod's actions. After a 3-hour journey, he finally returned to the bustling Manhattan from the desert. After the plane landed, Pepper and others got the news almost immediately and rushed to the military district. Back in Manhattan, Tony was no longer afraid of the threat posed by a Bedia, so he naturally didn't need to hide his whereabouts anymore. At the gate of the military district, when Tony walked out with Dr. Inson, he saw a row of luxury cars parked at the gate. A large group of bodyguards in suits stood respectfully by the side, led by a tall and beautiful workplace beauty in a professional suit. Looking at her, Tony's mind suddenly emerged with relevant information. Virginia Potts, the predecessor's right-hand man, and the predecessor's later sweetheart, also known as Pepper. With a smile on his lips, Tony walked up quickly, and Potts also quickly came up at this moment. Without any hesitation, Tony hugged Potts and kissed him deeply. The sudden action stunned Potts. Although she was very excited that Tony returned safely, it was still a bit unexpected for her to kiss him in public. However, after she reacted, she did not refuse, but responded more enthusiastically. She liked Tony in the first place, but she had always kept her distance because of his style. After Tony's disappearance, she had lost her previous reserve. Now, under Tony's initiative, she responded without any shyness. The people around looked at this scene, coughed lightly, and quickly looked away. They dared not interfere in the boss's affairs. After a while, Tony let go of Potts, smiled and waved, "Go home." After that, he hugged Potts, who was nestled in his arms, and got into the car. Of course, Inson could not ride in the same car with the two of them, so he could only sit with the bodyguard. In the car, Potts had sorted out her emotions and restored the image of a strong woman, reporting the situation of Stark Industries during the time when Tony disappeared. If it were the old Stark, he would have been impatient by now, but now Tony listened quietly and did not interrupt her. There were two key points. The first was Tony's disappearance, which caused Stark Industries stock to fall by nearly 20 percentage points. The second was Abadia, who had won over many shareholders during this period and seized more power in Stark Industries, intending to replace Tony. After Potts finished his report, Tony said, "Don't worry about the stock price drop. Now that I'm back, the stock will naturally go back up. As for Abadia's matter, my good uncle really took great pains, but now that I'm back, he has no chance. Collect evidence against him, hold a shareholders meeting, and I'm going to kick him out." After saying that, Potts' face changed. Abadia is the second largest shareholder after all, and he also controls half of the power of the group. If you want to move him, I'm afraid the entire group will be shaken. Now that you have just returned, the group needs stability. Should we wait a little longer? Potts' suggestion is very reasonable. As the second in command of the group, if he wants to kick Abadia out, it can be said that one move will affect the whole body. If it were a peaceful world, Tony would definitely plan slowly, but this is Marvel, and Tony has no time to spend time on these intrigues. She raised her hand and interrupted Potts, saying, "It's settled. Let's cut the Gordian knot. As for the turmoil in the group, as long as I'm here, the group won't fall." Tony had already sentenced Abadia to death in her heart. Going to hell was his only choice. Tony's calm and confident face made Potts look a little dazed. She found that Tony had changed after coming back this time. Although he was a genius before, he was just a playboy. But now, he has a domineering temperament, which makes people more fascinated than before. Chapter 5 Quest Reward, Horse Talisman. In Liberty City, Tony was wolfing down the food on the table in his seaside villa. Although he had not been in the desert for long, he had already eaten a lot. The first thing he did when he got home was to satisfy his appetite. As for Potts, after talking to him, he immediately took action to collect evidence about Abadia. Inson also checked into a villa to rest under his arrangement. At present, he was the only one in the villa. Of course, there was also an artificial intelligence, Jarvis. Sir, based on your current physical condition, it is not recommended that you overeat. In addition, according to the test, the energy consumption of the instrument on your chest is huge. If you don't solve it, your body will collapse quickly. Jarvis' voice rang in the villa. After Tony swallowed the last bite of steak, he put down his knife and fork with satisfaction. I know my situation very well, so you don't need to remind me. Jarvis, can you help me collect some information to see if there is any way to solve this iron lump on my chest? Okay, sir, I'm looking for a solution for you. Jarvis responded and fell silent. Tony looked at the iron lump on his chest and the battery not far away with a helpless look. In the original book, the predecessor used a macro-arc reactor to maintain life and provide energy for the steel armor. But what should he do now? There is no need to think about the arc reactor. This thing is still in the research stage in all countries in the world and has not been perfected. What's more, it has to be made into the size of a palm, which is simply challenging his cognition. In addition, he does not have the brain of his predecessor, so even if he wants to rub an arc reactor with his hands, it is impossible. Now he can only see if Jarvis has other ways. After waiting for a few minutes, Jarvis' voice soon rang again. Sir, I'm sorry, according to the system search, the existing technology is not enough to solve the problem on your chest. Even if the most advanced biotechnology is used, it can only ensure that your lifespan is extended. As an artificial intelligence, Jarvis is very intelligent, but he does not have human emotions, and his voice seems a little cold. Hearing this answer, although he had expected it, Tony still sighed and looked a little helpless. It seems that we still have to find a solution from the system. Tony muttered to himself, but he was not discouraged. He just wanted to try to find a solution from the outside world. His trump card has never been something from the Marvel world, but the system in his mind. Apart from anything else, as long as he can get the dog charm that can make him immortal and young forever, solving the problem in front of his chest is just a piece of cake. Thinking of this, Tony suddenly remembered his mission to escape. As he expected, this mission was completed after he returned to Liberty City. It's just that there were too many people and eyes before, so he didn't have time to claim the mission reward. Name: Tony Stark. Gender: male. Identity: successor of the Shadow Kingdom. Ability: control of one of the 9 divisions of the Shadow Core, not fusion. Number of draws: 1. Mission: escape. Completed. Looking at the personal data that has been refreshed on the information panel, Tony first chose to merge and bring the Shadow Ninja under his control. Suddenly, an inexplicable force filled his body, and his physical fitness improved rapidly at this moment. He could only control 10 Black Shadow Ninjas, and he instantly felt that his control power had greatly improved. Directly from the control authority of 10 Black Shadow Ninjas, he completely controlled the entire core. The Black Shadow Core is divided into 9 parts, and the number of people in each part is endless. Now that he has completely controlled a Black Shadow Ninja, the increase in his power is simply unimaginable. In the future, when he goes out, it means that he can explode soldiers around him at any time. Even against a million fully armed regular troops, he is not afraid. This power is naturally nothing in the later period of Marvel. After all, in that era of modifying the timeline at will, the role of the number of people has been greatly reduced. But in the early period of Marvel, controlling a Black Shadow Ninja, not to mention sweeping invincibility, is definitely a force standing at the top of the world. In addition to the Ancient One, the Hulk and a few perverts, some other superheroes can kill them, even if they are consumed. What's more, the combat power of the Black Shadow Ninja is not low at all. Tony's mood became comfortable, and he set his sights on the lottery again. If the Black Shadow Core increased his power, then the ability gained from the lottery would increase his personal strength. To be honest, although the Black Shadow Core was very attractive, his own strength was more attractive. Rubbing his palms, Tony directly used the number of lottery draws. Suddenly, a disc appeared in front of him. The disc was black, and divided into 12 grids. Each grid was marked with a question mark. If you don't draw it out, you don't know what is inside. As the pointer rotated, Tony's mood became nervous. In just a few seconds, the speed of the pointer's rotation was invisible to the naked eye. "Stop," he shouted in his heart, and the speed of the pointer suddenly slowed down, and soon gradually stopped on a grid. A burst of light appeared in front of his eyes in an instant, and soon a horse appeared in front of him. Woo! The sound of a horse neighing sounded. The white horse turned into a stream of light, and went directly into Tony's head. At the same time, an inexplicable message appeared in Tony's mind, including the power of the pony, which was easily controlled by Tony. Tony was stunned at first, and then his whole face was filled with joy. There are 8 demons in the adventure, the most powerful of which is the Fire Demon Lord. In addition to the magic of fire, the source of the Lord's power is the 12 spells. The 12 spells are represented by the 12 zodiac signs, and the pony just now is the power of the horse spell in the 12 spells. The horse spell is not a combat spell, but an auxiliary spell. It can not only cure all diseases and remove all negative states, but also has a powerful healing ability. As long as there is a breath, it can be saved on the spot. This made Tony, who was just having a headache about the chest problem, overjoyed instantly. With the power of the horse spell, he will be the best doctor in the world in the future. As long as he wants, he can save even those who are destined to die. This made Tony think of an old saying in his previous life: if the king of hell wants you to die at 3 o'clock, who dares to keep you until 5 o'clock? Tony, I dare. Suppressing the surprise in his heart, Tony looked at the iron lump on his chest, and without saying a word, he slapped it out. Suck, hiss. Tony gasped in pain, and a blood hole appeared on his chest. But before the blood could flow out, a milky white light instantly enveloped the blood hole. Suddenly, the blood hole healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. In less than a minute, Tony's chest injury was completely healed, and his originally pale face became ruddy. Chapter 6, Sell or Not Sell. Sir, what's going on? Special biotechnology. Why have I never seen it before, and there is no record of it in the system? Just as Tony recovered from his injuries, Jarvis' voice suddenly rang out in the room. As an artificial intelligence, although it does not have human emotions, it does not prevent it from imitating the tone of amazement, and it can also be seen that Jarvis is shocked. Hearing this, Tony also smiled. Biotechnology, you can also understand it this way, but I prefer to call this power magic. Tony said in a pleasantly surprised tone, while Jarvis remained silent, as if thinking about something. As a product of technology, it has no idea about magic. Compared with these fantasy things, it prefers science and technology supported by data. Magic? It seems that human power is far more complicated than I thought. Jarvis sighed inexplicably, and Tony's voice rang out again. Jarvis, check my current physical data. Okay, sir. After speaking, Jarvis immediately scanned and quickly gave an answer. Sir, you are in good health now, and your physical fitness has reached 3 times that of an ordinary person, which is healthier than ever before. Hearing this answer, Tony was completely relieved. At this moment, a phone rang. Sir, Miss Potts is calling. Do you want to answer it? Go ahead. As soon as Tony finished speaking, Potts' voice suddenly rang in the villa. Tony, I found what you asked me to check. Abadi did sell out a lot of group intelligence, but he destroyed all the evidence. I can't find the evidence. Sorry. Potts' tone was full of apology. Tony frowned at first, but soon relaxed. I see. Since you can't find it, there's no need to check. I'll use other methods to deal with him. Okay. Potts responded, but her tone could not hide her curiosity. She wanted to know how Tony would deal with Abadia. However, seeing that Tony didn't mean to say more, she didn't ask any more questions, and could only hang up the phone. After the phone was hung up, Tony's voice rang again. Jarvis, check Abadia's location. Okay, sir. Jarvis started working quickly. As the most perfect artificial intelligence in Marvel, although he knows nothing about magic, no one can compare to it when it comes to technology. In the original book, Tony upgraded his armor, and in addition to relying on his smart brain, Jarvis also contributed a lot. Even if the predecessor can be on par with gods with the power of mortals, Jarvis's help also accounts for a large part. Even if Tony does not plan to take the technological route now, Jarvis is still an important assistant. Sir, Abadias' location has been found. He is now in his villa. After getting the answer, Tony did not say a word, put on his clothes, and left the villa. Driving a supercar, Tony went to the wealthy area of Liberty City. At first, he planned to use formal means to kick Abadia out of the company, let him fall from heaven to hell, and then take his life. But this guy is obviously more shrewd than he thought, and he did not leave any evidence at all. In this case, Tony can only choose to take force. Firstly, this method is the fastest. Secondly, with a group of shadow soldiers under his control, he has enough confidence to deal with any danger, so there is no need to play along with Abadia. Although this guy's the villain in the original book, he is nothing without the Big Mac. He did not take the technological route in this life. Without his Iron Man suit, Abadia would not be able to make a Big Mac, even if he wanted to. After all, not everyone is a predecessor who can make an Iron Man suit with simple conditions. In just 20 minutes, Tony arrived at Abadias' residence. Ding dong. The doorbell rang, and a maid's voice came from the villa. I'm here. Soon, the door opened, and the maid saw Tony standing at the door, and said respectfully, Mr. Tony, is Uncle Stan home? I have something to ask him. Tony asked with a smile. The maid nodded immediately and made way. Yes, Mr. Tony, please follow me. Because Tony was the head of Stark Industries, the maid let him walk into the villa without asking too many questions. When he came to the living room, a 50-year-old white bald man suddenly appeared in front of Tony. He was Abadia, the most powerful man in the entire Stark Industries empire besides Tony. Stan. Looking at Tony, Abadias' face clearly flashed with surprise. He had heard the news of Tony's return before, and he had also wanted to see Tony, but was rejected by Tony. Unexpectedly, Tony would come to him at this time. However, Abadia hid it very well, and the surprise flashed away, and a smile suddenly appeared on his face and said, Tony, welcome back. You have been missing for a while, which made me worried. Fortunately, God bless you, and keep you safe. Looking at Abadia with a sincere face, if Tony hadn't known the true face of this old man earlier, he would have been deceived by him. By the way, you just came back. Why do you have time to come to me instead of resting at home? Abadia was a little surprised and alert. As a playboy, Tony would rather go out to pick up girls than spend time to see him, let alone visit him like now. It's like the sun is rising from the west. Looking at Abadias' puzzled eyes, Tony smiled slightly. Uncle Stan, I came here today because I really want to discuss something with you. I hope you can sell your shares to me. This is the sales contract. Take a look. After speaking, Tony put a contract on the table. As the second largest shareholder of Stark Industries, Abadia holds a lot of shares. Although he wants to kill him, he also wants to get the shares, which is why he will come here in person. Otherwise, he can just send the Black Shadow Ninja directly, and there is no need to come here in person. As soon as these words came out, Abadias' face changed instantly. What do you mean, Tony? Your father and I founded Stark Industries. Are you trying to kick me out now? Abadia asked. Tony didn't try to hide anything and nodded openly. You're right. I'm going to kick you out. Sorry, I won't sell my shares. Please get out. Abadia said, suppressing his anger. Uncle Stan, this is not up to you. You have to sell today or not. As he spoke, 20 Black Shadow Ninjas appeared in the villa in an instant, and a samurai sword flashing with cold light fell directly on Abadias' neck. Suddenly, Abadias' expression changed instantly. Chapter 7 If you want to kill me, I will definitely kill you. Tony had a warm smile on his face, and his eyes were fixed on Abadia. At this moment, Abadia was also looking at the Black Shadow Ninja who suddenly appeared in the living room, his face twitching constantly, and his face became ugly. Tony, what do you mean by this? I'm your uncle. Are you going to kill me? Seeing his stern face, Tony waved his hand quickly. Uncle Stan, you misunderstood me. How could I do such a thing? As long as you sell the shares to me, I will naturally not embarrass you. Otherwise. Tony did not continue to speak, but Abadia immediately understood the underlying meaning of his words. It would be fine if he sold the shares, but if he didn't sell them, he couldn't guarantee what would happen. And through Tony's coercion, Abadia also saw more things. Tony used to respect him, but the reason why he became like this now should be that he noticed what he did. But how did he know, and where did this group of guys who were obviously not normal humans come from? In a short moment, the thoughts in his mind turned thousands of times. In the end, he decided not to suffer a loss and gritted his teeth and said, "Okay, I'll sell it. But you have to swear in your father's name that you must let me go afterward." Abadia said. He knew that Tony had a gap with his father on the surface, but in fact he still respected his father very much and would never joke about his father's name. Tony did not hesitate to agree to this condition. "Okay, no problem. I swear in my father's name that, as long as you sell the group's shares to me, I will let you go." Hearing this, Abadia was obviously relieved, and then he no longer hesitated and directly took a pen to sign the share transfer contract on the table. After he signed it, Tony picked up the contract and checked it. He flicked his fingers and smiled. "Done. Can we let them go now?" Abadia said with a gloomy face. Tony's face suddenly showed a bright smile. "Okay. However, I said I would let you go, but I didn't say they would let you go. If you want to kill me, of course I have to kill you. Get rid of him. Asshole, you liar." Abadia screamed instantly, but before he could continue, the cold blade directly cut through his throat. Suddenly, a streak of blood bloomed at his throat. Abadia's vitality quickly faded, and his body fell on the carpet, his eyes staring at Tony, and he died with his eyes open. "If I don't kill you, wouldn't it be unfair to my predecessor?" Tony smiled playfully, raised his foot, and kicked Abadia's head away, and walked out of the villa. Just after walking out of the living room, Tony saw the maid just now holding tea and looking at him with horror. Obviously, everything that happened in the living room just now was seen by her. Seeing this, Tony raised his eyebrows slightly and snapped his fingers and said, "Deal with her." Before the maid could react, the cold blade had already pierced her chest, and there was another body on the ground. With the appearance of the maid, Tony also realized that he still needed to deal with the beginning and the end, so he ordered 20 Black Shadow ninjas to search inside and outside the villa to see if there were any other people. After confirming that there were no other people, Tony destroyed the surveillance in the villa and asked the Black Shadow ninjas to drag all the 2 bodies on the ground into the Black Shadow Kingdom and feed the dark creatures, and then he left the villa leisurely. Not long after Tony left, a group of people came outside the villa. They were Abalia's bodyguards, who had been sent out by Abalia before and had just returned. A group of people stood at the door of the villa, and the leader, a strong man in a suit, rang the doorbell, but after a long time, no one opened the door. The expressions of these people changed one after another, and they broke into the door directly. As top bodyguards, their strength was not weaker than that of the military district soldier king, and they soon entered the villa. They searched around, but couldn't find Abalia, and everyone's faces suddenly became ugly. At this moment, a bodyguard who was searching in the living room exclaimed, "Boss, come and see." After saying that, the leading suited strong man quickly came to the living room and immediately saw his team members standing on the sofa. His eyes subconsciously looked at the sofa and saw the bloodstains on the sofa at the first time. Suddenly, his face became gloomy. They are top bodyguards, and it is their duty to protect their employers. Now that the employer is obviously in trouble, their careers are over. Who would dare to hire a group of bodyguards who can't protect their employers? "Boss, what should we do?" a bodyguard asked. The leading bodyguard was silent for a long time and finally sighed helplessly. "Call the police." Soon, the US Police Department arrived, blocked the villa, and traced the traces at the scene. On the other side, Tony left the villa and walked directly to Stark Industries. On the way, he contacted Potts and asked her to hold a shareholders meeting. The change of shares must be notified to other shareholders before it can take effect. At the same time, Tony also wants to take this opportunity to see if he can drive all shareholders out of the group and privatize Stark. Of course, this idea is not urgent, it is just an idea. Tony holds 75% of Stark Industries shares, and Abelia holds 20%. The remaining 5% is shared by 3 small shareholders, and the remaining 2% is circulated on the stock market. Now that he has obtained Abelia's shares, Tony's shares have reached 95% absolute control, and it doesn't matter whether the remaining shares are taken back or not. It's just that compared to 95%, Tony prefers the number of 100%. Soon, Tony came to Stark Industries and took a private elevator to his office. This is his exclusive elevator, and no one except him has the right to take it. Sitting in the office chair, Tony called Potts, and as the door of the office was pushed open, Tony's eyes subconsciously looked at the door. Potts was wearing a black suit with a white shirt inside. The slender legs were wrapped in a pair of black stockings, and the black high heels made a thumping sound when walking, which made Tony look at them a few more times. Fortunately, he still remembered the business, and quickly retracted his gaze and said, "Has the news of my return spread?" "Not yet, I'm planning to arrange a press conference tomorrow," Potts said with some surprise. "Well, I'll give you a task, buy out the shares of that group of shareholders and repurchase the shares. I'm afraid it's difficult. Abelia won't give us this opportunity. He already knows the news of your return." Potts frowned. Hearing this, Tony smiled and pushed the contract out. "Take a look at this." Potts subconsciously picked up the contract on the table, and when she saw the content clearly, a look of shock suddenly appeared on her face. "How is this possible? How did you do it?" If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 8, Become a Villain from Now On. Potts looked at Tony in shock, his eyes full of disbelief. Abelia actually transferred the shares to Tony. How could this be possible? Seeing her incredulous expression, Tony kept smiling and said, "Anyway, Abelia will not be an obstacle, just go ahead and do it." "Okay," Potts responded, and the expression on her face quickly calmed down. No matter how Tony got it, she just needed to deal with the remaining small shareholders. Soon, Potts left the office and went to the conference room. The conference room was on the same floor as Tony's office, and soon Tony, who was sitting in the office, heard the roar coming from outside the door. Obviously, the small shareholders couldn't sit still when they heard that their shares were to be repurchased. But Tony didn't pay attention. Professional matters should be left to professionals, and in business, Potts is undoubtedly professional, and I believe she will handle everything. At this moment, the cold voice of the system suddenly sounded. Ding, mission released. Main task, form a Dark Alliance task content, recruit enough people with abilities, form a Dark Alliance, and spread darkness to the world. Mission reward, successfully recruit one person, reward a lottery, and a part of the Shadow Corps. Looking at the system panel that suddenly appeared in front of him, Tony's eyes suddenly condensed, and then the corners of his mouth twitched. Although he had long known that his system was not a good thing, he did not expect it to be a villain system. "I'm the famous Iron Man, the leader of the Justice League. Although there was an accident, and I can no longer transform into Iron Man, I'm still a great good man. Now I'm allowed to spread darkness to the world. Am I that kind of person?" Glancing at the corner of his mouth, Tony's voice suddenly sounded. "Jarvis. Sir, I'm here. Help me check if there are any strange things happening in New York City recently." "Already checked, sir. Nothing strange has happened." "Okay." Tony smacked his lips in disappointment. Although he is a good person, the system has given too much. Whether it is a lottery or a Shadow Corps, they are all good things. Unfortunately, none of those superheroes have shown up, and there is no place for him to recruit. No, why should I spend time looking for them? It's time consuming and laborious, and it also delays my chance to pick up girls. I should let them come to me on their own initiative. Who do superheroes hate the most? Of course, they are villains. These people are all experienced superheroes. If I have a villain army, superheroes will come to me continuously. As the saying goes, there are always more solutions than problems. Once this idea was opened, Tony's thoughts became extremely clear. Finding superheroes is like fishing. Putting down the bait and waiting for the fish to bite is the best way. But before that, he needs a bait. And this bait can't be too weak. After all, it's troublesome to change the bait every day. Thinking of this, Tony's limited knowledge of Marvel suddenly came to his mind. What are the famous villains in Marvel? One Thanos and one Kingpin. He can only remember these two, which are more representative. Needless to say, old man Thanos is still hiding on some planet thinking about family planning at this time. So, Tony only has one candidate left, Kingpin. Among the many characters in Marvel, Iron Man and Kingpin are the most similar. One is a mortal who is on par with gods, and the other is a mortal who fights against a group of superheroes. But from this point of view, both of them are outstanding people and geniuses. Moreover, Kingpin has a huge influence, and his business is all over the United States. He is known as the Underground Emperor of New York. Every superhero likes to make trouble for him. He is undoubtedly an excellent bait. No, it should be a partner. With Kingpin to attract attention, you can keep fishing. By then, forming a dark alliance is not a piece of cake. Thinking of this, Tony smiled immediately. Just when he was thinking about how to get Kingpin to cooperate with him. In the other meeting room, Potts also successfully took over the shares held by those small shareholders at the cost of 400 million me gold. Don't look at the appearance of a lot of money. At the peak of Stark Industries, the shares held by each of them were worth 10 figures. 400 million me gold took over their shares, which is simply a bargain price. At this point, Tony's shares had increased to 98%, with only 2% of the shares circulating in the market. Seeing Tony, who had just returned, and had the entire group in his hands, Potts' eyes flashed with a complex look. What should we do next? Now the entire group has only your voice. Delist. Take back the remaining 2% as well. Tony said in a calm tone, and Potts' face changed instantly. You are crazy. Do you know how big the impact of delisting is? Once delisted, your wealth will probably shrink by half in an instant. Potts couldn't help but shout. But Tony didn't care. With the share uppercase at this point, delisting was inevitable. Even if the loss was huge, he would insist on it. It's not that he has a grudge against money, but that the group will be regulated by the government and supervised by the public as long as it doesn't delist. After delisting, although the loss was heavy, it also made Stark Industries completely a private kingdom without having to look at anyone's face. In order to prevent Stark from being exposed to the sun, he must delist. Don't worry about other things, just listen to me. You must delist. In addition, announce a false news to the public, saying that the group intends to shut down weapons manufacturing. If Potts could tolerate everything before, she couldn't sit still after hearing this. What? You want to shut down weapons manufacturing? This is the lifeblood of the group. Potts shouted, obviously disagreeing with Tony's decision. Tony rolled his eyes and said helplessly, I said it was fake news. I just asked you to announce it to fool those shareholders who said it was going to be shut down. If it was his predecessor, he might have done this. After all, he did this in the original book, but Tony is not stupid. If you don't make weapons, there are plenty of people who will. It is said that the market has absolute demand. Unless the world is united one day, weapons will always be needed. In this case, why should he deceive himself and give up his wealth to others in vain? After listening to the explanation, Potts breathed a sigh of relief, and his previous decision to delist was no longer important. As long as the weapons manufacturing is not shut down, delisting is fine. Thinking of this with a headache, Potts left Tony's office again, not daring to stay any longer. Otherwise, who knows what shocking remarks Tony will make. She acted quickly, and within a few hours, the false news that Stark Industries was about to shut down weapons manufacturing spread like wildfire. The stock, which had already been fluctuating due to Tony's disappearance, suddenly fell like a diving. Chapter 9. First meeting with Kingpin. In the US stock market, as the news spread from Stark Industries, everyone began to sell their stocks, and more people scolded Tony endlessly. They could never have imagined that the high quality stocks a few days ago would fall into such a state now. In order to stop the loss, they had no choice but to sell. And when they were selling, Potts had organized a team to buy all the stocks they sold. However, this is destined to be a big project, and it is definitely not something that can be done in a day or two. So after giving the order, Tony no longer paid attention to this mess, but asked Jarvis to find some information about Kingpin and study it. Kingpin was born in the slums of Hell's Kitchen, but because he dared to fight, and fight on the road, he soon sat in a high-level position. Later, Hell's Kitchen had an accident, and Kingpin's power also declined. However, he was ambitious, and swallowed up his old boss in one gulp and rose completely. From this point alone, we can see the danger of Kingpin. Cooperating with such a person is undoubtedly seeking the skin of a tiger. If the system didn't exist, Tony wouldn't want to have too much contact with such a person. But now, he naturally wouldn't be afraid of a Kingpin. After studying the information, he asked Jarvis to find Kingpin's contact information. As the top artificial intelligence of this era, wherever there is a network and a signal, it is Jarvis's territory. Even though Kingpin's mobile phone number is very hidden, it took Jarvis 30 seconds to find it. Beep. The phone rang, and soon the call was connected. A dull and majestic voice came from the phone. Hello. Hello. Let me introduce myself. My name is Tony, the head of Stark Industries. You should know me. I have a business to discuss with you. I wonder if Mr. Kingpin has time. Without any euphemism, Tony got straight to the point after the call was connected. In his previous life, whether he was watching movies or novels, what he hated most was that the conversation between the protagonist and the supporting role could never get to the point. So, he naturally wouldn't make this mistake. On the other end of the phone, when Tony's voice fell, the other side suddenly became quiet. Obviously, Tony's directness made Kingpin a little unresponsive. But a tyrant is a tyrant. In just a few seconds, he came back to his senses and thought about Tony's purpose. Stark Supply Industry is a product of the sun. No matter how cruel it is legal. Kingpin is just the opposite. His business and power are all illegal and destined to hide in the dark. He really can't find a place for cooperation between these two forces. Oh, Stark, interesting. How do you want to cooperate? Kingpin asked with a hint of curiosity in his tone. Tony did not answer this question directly, but said with a smile on his lips, since Mr. Kingpin is also interested, why don't we meet and talk? After the words fell, there was another silence on the other end of the phone. Tony was not in a hurry, and waited quietly for a response. 10 seconds later, Kingpin's steady voice sounded again. Okay, then meet and talk. I'll wait for you on Queen's Road. After that, a beep came from the phone, and Kingpin hung up the phone directly. Tony also stood up at this moment, and walked out the door. The smile on his face disappeared instantly, and his expression became extremely calm. Taking the exclusive elevator to the 3rd floor below ground, Tony got on the supercar, and started the car. With the roar of the sports car, a silver supercar rushed out of the parking lot. Queen's Road. When Tony arrived here, he turned off the engine, and got out of the car and lit a cigarette and started smoking. The cigarette was half burned, and a strong man in a black suit walked directly towards him. Hello, Mr. Tony. Mr. Wilson asked me to pick you up. Then let's go. Tony said directly, flicking the cigarette in his hand, drawing an arc in the air, and falling in the middle of the road. Then the two got into a black car one after the other. The strong man in the car took out a black cloth and said, sorry, Mr. Tony, please cooperate with me. Seeing this, Tony nodded, showing his understanding, and let the strong man cover his face with the black cloth. Tony lost his vision, but he was not panicked. In the darkness that ordinary people could not see, pairs of scollard eyes were staring at the people in the car. If there was any accident, they would be torn to pieces in the first place. 20 minutes later, Tony walked into a house under the guidance of the strong man, and the black cloth was removed for him. Darkness and light intertwined. Tony squinted his eyes subconsciously, and looked at the surrounding environment. This is an ordinary courtyard. Ignoring the black-clothed men standing guard around, it is no different from the residence of ordinary people. In the middle of the lawn, a giant was sitting on the lawn in casual clothes. There was a barbecue grill in front of him, and steaks kept making sizzling sounds. Looking at the figure like a hill, Tony's eyes flashed with surprise. Although he knew that Kingpin was very burly, he didn't expect him to be so burly. He was about 2 meters tall, with muscles all over his body, especially his arms, which were thicker than the thighs of ordinary people. The guy next to him was already very strong among ordinary people, but in front of Kingpin, it was like a child and an adult, with a huge gap. The thoughts in his mind turned around, and only a breath of time passed in the outside world. Tony immediately raised his legs and walked over. As he approached, Kingpin immediately looked up at him, and looked at him deeply with his deep eyes, and then said in a calm tone, "Are you here? Eat something first." Faced with the invitation, Tony was not afraid at all, and nodded directly. "Okay, I'm hungry. Grill it a little bit. I don't want to eat it raw." Hearing this, Kingpin's mouth curled up. Since he swallowed up all the forces of Hell's Kitchen, this was the first time someone dared to say this in front of him. "Okay." After responding, Kingpin continued to grill the steak. Neither of them mentioned the cooperation, as if they had completely forgotten. As the steaks came out of the oven, Tony ate them without hesitation, and even opened a bottle of red wine in the middle. He was full of taste. If you didn't know, you would think he was here for a picnic. An hour later, Tony and Kingpin finished all the ingredients. Several men in black came forward to remove the grill, and Tony sat lazily on the recliner. At this moment, Kingpin's voice also sounded, "Tell me, how do you want to cooperate?" Hearing this, Tony glanced at him and complained, "I thought you could hold it in for a long time." Kingpin's face remained unchanged, and he didn't care about Tony's ridicule. Seeing this, Tony immediately lost interest in teasing him and said, "I sell arms, so we have a natural basis for cooperation. I provide you with weapons, and you help me do something. How about it?" Chapter 10 Peter Parker and Natasha. As Tony spoke, he looked at Kingpin's reaction, while Kingpin acted very calm. "Weapons, I can get them myself. I don't have to cooperate with you. If that's all, you can't impress me." Kingpin looked at Tony and shook his head to show that he was not satisfied with this condition. Tony immediately raised his eyebrows. "Really? You can also get the new weapons of the military? You can also get rockets, tanks, and missiles? You can also get the top equipment from the military laboratory?" Tony threw out a series of questions, and Kingpin's originally calm expression suddenly changed. "What do you want to do?" He thought Tony wanted to cooperate with him with conventional weapons, and he was not a rebel, so the demand for weapons was not so great. However, from Tony's tone, he was going to provide him with some high-tech weapons. These things were strictly prohibited and blocked by the military. No matter how powerful he was, he couldn't get them without special channels. So, he, who had originally acted indifferent, finally couldn't help but become serious at this moment. Seeing his reaction, Tony also smiled and shook his head and said, "I will provide you with weapons, and you are responsible for providing me with some people's information. Of course, if you can send these people to me directly, I don't mind." "What kind of people?" Jinbing asked. "Some people with special abilities. You will deal with these people frequently in the future, and you will know when the time comes." Tony didn't say it clearly, but he believed that when Jinbing met those people, he would understand what he meant. And Jinbing didn't continue to ask, but fell into deep thought. Tony's conditions were very simple to him, even too simple. If it were another condition, Jin would not necessarily choose to cooperate. Who knows if Tony has a bigger plan? But the channel for high-tech weapons was too rare, so he was completely reluctant to give up. So after thinking it over again and again, he finally agreed to cooperate. As for forcing Tony with other means, Jinbing did not consider it, but this idea was quickly abandoned by him. Stark Industries is a giant military industrial enterprise with too much influence in the United States. If he touches Tony, he will have no place to stay in the United States in the future. It is unrealistic to force Tony to cooperate by other means. As Kingpin loosened his mouth, the two officially reached a cooperation. Tony did not stay too long and left directly. Now that the bait has been laid, he just needs to wait for those superheroes to take the bait. He finally doesn't have to run around anymore and can enjoy his life. That night, Tony summoned a large number of Hollywood actresses to attend the party and started his wealthy life. While Tony was enjoying his life, on the other side, in a certain strategic defense attack and logistics support agency, Alexander Pierce was studying Tony's information. It contained information about Tony's sudden return after his disappearance, and information about a barrier's strange death. Both of these things were full of mystery, which aroused Pierce's interest. At this moment, the door of the office was knocked, and a beautiful woman walked in. With long wavy hair and a black leather coat, she was seductive and charming. "Director, you're looking for me?" the woman asked. Pierce immediately replied, "Natasha, you're here at the right time. There's something you need to investigate. Here's the target's information." After saying that, he pushed the information on the desk to Natasha. Natasha quickly lowered her head to check it out, and the office fell into silence for a while. Soon, Natasha finished reading the information, and a hint of wonder flashed in her eyes. "Tony Stark, what did this playboy do that we have to investigate?" As a figure who often makes headlines in the entertainment industry, it's hard for Natasha not to know him. That's why she felt strange. He's just a playboy. Although he's very rich, he's not worth their attention. Facing Natasha's confusion, Pierce didn't waste any words and directly handed her the information in his hand. This playboy was not worth noting before, but it may not be the case now. He disappeared in the desert not long ago, and returned on his own without waiting for rescue. After he returned, Abadia, the second in command of Stark Industries, disappeared. FBL has already investigated the scene, and found nothing, except the bloodstains left behind. Moreover, on the day Abadia disappeared, the shares of Stark Industries changed. Tony acquired the shares of other shareholders, including Abadia's shares. Now he controls 98% of Stark Industries shares. Natasha looked at the information, and Pierce kept explaining. "So, I have reason to suspect that Abadia's disappearance is closely related to Tony. It may even involve some mysterious power. So, your task is simple. Get close to him, find out his background, or the power behind him." After speaking, Pierce quietly waited for Natasha's response. After a long while, Natasha, who had finished reading the information, finally said, "I understand. Leave this task to me." Soon, Natasha left the office, and Pierce took out his phone and dialed a number. "I have asked someone to start the investigation. You keep a close eye on him. Once there is a result, arrest him." "Yes." The person on the other end of the phone responded, and Pierce hung up the phone directly. After doing all this, his eyes fell on Tony's photo. Looking a little deep, while all parties were taking action, in a residential house somewhere in Brooklyn, a young man with glasses was lying on the ground with a hideous face and twitching constantly. His name is Peter Parker, a college student, was accidentally bitten by a spider when he went to the biology museum to participate in an exhibition today. After returning home, he became like this, and no one knew about all this at the moment. A night passed quickly, and when the sun rose the next day, Tony woke up from the pile of beauties. Looking at the mess on the bed, Tony stretched out with a satisfied look on his face. Walking downstairs in pajamas, Potts was sitting on the sofa in the living room with an indifferent look on his face. Tony, who had just come downstairs, saw this scene and couldn't help but flash a trace of embarrassment on his face, but it was gone in a flash. "Hey, Potts, why are you here?" Hearing this, Potts glanced at Tony in pajamas and said in a cold tone, "The stock acquisition is almost done. I came to ask when you plan to hold a press conference to inform the outside world of your return. Also, someone from the tax bureau invited you to have tea and wanted to talk to you about delisting." When speaking, Potts' tone was full of resentment. "I worked hard for this bastard, but this bastard is spending his time here. So angry." Chapter 11. Black Widow is ruthlessly rejected. Looking at Potts, who looked unhappy, Tony coughed and said, "I'm not going to see the guys from the tax bureau. I'm delisting. What does it have to do with them? Let them do what they should do. As for the press conference, let's hold it in the afternoon. Since the matter has been settled, there is no need to hide it. By the way, help me clean up the garbage upstairs later." After saying that, Tony went to the bathroom to wash up, and Potts looked at his back and cursed with gritted teeth. "Asshole." After cursing, she had to walk upstairs with full of helplessness. Soon, several ladies were driven out of the villa by her. After having breakfast with Tony, the two went to the company together. As the person in charge of the company, although Tony threw most of the things to Potts, some documents still needed his personal signature to take effect. In addition, during the time he was missing, the company had accumulated a large number of documents waiting to be processed. So, in the next few days, Tony was tied to the company and worked hard like a cow and a horse. During the days when Tony was working hard, a big thing happened in New York. A guy named Spider-Man appeared out of nowhere and fought crime in New York. For a time, people in New York were discussing this Spider-Man who came out of nowhere. Some people think that he is the patron saint of New York, and some people think that, although this guy fights crime, he is no different from those criminals, because he fights violence with violence. As for the attitude of the New York police, it is even more obvious. The appearance of this guy is simply a slap in their face. They are the law enforcers and guardians of New York, so they directly issued a wanted order. However, the one who is most angry about Spider-Man is probably Kingpin. As the emperor who controls 80% of the underground transactions in New York, Spider-Man is attacking his business. Because of Spider-Man, he has lost tens of millions of dollars during this period. Kingpin naturally doesn't care about this little money, but he can't allow anyone to challenge his majesty. In a building, Jinping sat calmly on an office chair. In front of him, the strong man in a suit, who had received Tony before, stood solemnly. He was Jinping's confidant Daniel. Brown was responsible for managing various businesses in New York City. How is the investigation going? Have you figured out the identity of that guy? Jinping's voice, which could not be heard, made Daniel feel cold in his heart. The calmer Jinping was, the angrier he was. He didn't dare to offend him at this time, so he spoke quickly. Mr. Wilson, I'm sorry, I didn't find out his specific identity. That guy moved too fast. We couldn't keep up with him, and every time he appeared, there was no sign. I mobilized most of the surveillance in New York City, but couldn't find his figure before he changed his clothes. After saying that, Daniel lowered his head in panic, fearing that Jinping would get angry and implicate himself. Fortunately, Jinping didn't get angry, but turned his head to look at the scene outside the French window, muttering to himself, "Is this the person you are looking for?" After saying that, Jinping picked up his mobile phone and called Tony. In the Stark Industries building, Tony, who was busy, heard the phone ring. "Jarvis, answer it." "Yes, sir." The next second, Kingpin's voice rang in the office. "I think the person you're looking for has appeared." Hearing this, Tony stopped reviewing the documents. "So soon? Where is he?" "I don't know," Kingpin said as a matter of course, and Tony's mouth twitched. "What's his name then?" "Spider-Man." Hearing this name, Tony raised his eyebrows, but there was not much surprise in his eyes. He didn't know the order of appearance of superheroes, but because of New York City, he always felt that the first person he should contact should be this little spider. He also tried to find his location, but New York was too big, with a permanent population of tens of millions. If he wanted to find someone by a name, even if he controlled Stark Industries, it would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. At this time, Kingpin's voice rang again. "What are you going to do?" Hearing this, Tony's mouth curled up. "It's very simple. You arrange someone to conduct illegal transactions. Lead him out. Leave the rest to me." "Okay, then tonight, I'll arrange a transaction in Manhattan, where he often hangs out." Kingpin agreed directly and hung up the phone. Tony also put down the documents in his hand at this moment, stood up and walked to the French window, looking at the people outside the window, his eyes flashing. The former superhero eventually degenerated into a dark villain. It should be very interesting. Tony couldn't help laughing as he said this. At this moment, there was a knock on the door, and a figure of manly walked in. She was Tony's new secretary, Natasha. As for Potts, she is now the CEO of Stark Industries, so she no longer serves as a secretary. Originally, according to Potts' intention, Tony was to arrange a male secretary for him. But this decision was firmly opposed by Tony, so Natasha successfully took over with her own conditions. "Mr. Tony, this is the document that Miss Potts asked me to deliver. You need to sign it." Natasha wore a pair of glasses and exuded an intellectual temperament, which was very attractive. But Tony, who was standing in front of the French window, didn't even look at her. He just waved his hand and said, "Put it down." Seeing this, Natasha could only put down the document and looked at Tony's back with a puzzled look. The script was not what she imagined. Wasn't this guy a playboy? She had been working for several days. Why didn't she see this guy flirting with her? Was she not beautiful and charming enough? Impossible. Natasha decisively rejected this possibility. Then she looked at Tony's back, hesitated for a moment, took the initiative to step forward, and put her hand on Tony's shoulder and said, "Mr. Tony, are you tired? I have learned Chinese massage, which can relieve fatigue. Do you want to try it?" As she spoke, Natasha's pair of tender little hands began to massage Tony's shoulders. At this moment, the two bodies were no more than 1 centimeter apart. Tony could even smell the fragrance emanating from her body, which could arouse the desire deep in people's hearts. Suddenly, Tony turned and looked at Natasha. Natasha's big eyes could not help but exude a seductive look. The neckline on her chest was just wide enough to see the scenery inside, whether intentionally or unintentionally. But the scene she imagined did not appear, and Tony frowned directly. "What are you doing?" Hearing this, Natasha's expression froze, and she didn't know how to answer. Wasn't what she hinted obvious enough? And Tony continued, "Find out your identity, work hard, and don't do these messy things. Get out, now, right away." "Oh, okay, Mr. Tony." Natasha responded in a panic, and walked out of the office. After leaving the office, her mind was still buzzing. Was she being disliked? Chapter 12. No way to heaven, and no door to earth. In the office, Tony looked at Natasha's back as she left, and a smile appeared on his lips. When he saw Natasha, he had already recognized her identity. After all, as a beauty in Marvel, Black Widow is still very well known. It is precisely because of this that he acted like that. Otherwise, there is no such thing as a cat not eating fish and a man not stealing fish. It's just because fish have thorns, so you need to remove the thorns before you can eat it. Without paying attention to Natasha's affairs, he started to deal with the documents again. Time passed quickly in his busyness, and soon night fell. Tony drove away from the Stark Industrial Building and came to 13th Avenue in Manhattan Shield. This is the trading place chosen by Kingpin. There are few pedestrians, and it is suitable for trading. Parking the car on the side of the road, Tony turned off the engine and sat in the car. Soon, 2 black cars stopped on the road. The 2 gangs conducted the transaction according to the normal process. Time passed little by little, and the transaction soon came to an end. Just when the 2 parties were about to end the transaction, a young voice suddenly came from the alley beside the road. "Gentlemen, good evening. What are you doing? Do you need help?" The sudden voice startled everyone, and their faces changed immediately. "Fuck, Spider-Man. Shoot, shoot." A leader shouted loudly, and both parties in the transaction fired at the same time. For a moment, gunshots rang out in the darkness. Countless bullets poured directly towards Spider-Man, and Spider-Man, who was just hanging upside down at the entrance of the alley, disappeared at the moment the gunshots rang out. He jumped and appeared directly in front of everyone. The spider silk on his wrist kept firing, like bullets, knocking everyone to the ground. In just a few breaths, the battle was over, and both parties in the transaction were captured by him. "Gentlemen, it seems that you need my help to call the police." Spider-Man looked at the items traded by both parties, leaned over and took out a phone from a member, and was about to call the police. But at this moment, his movement stopped instantly, and his eyes looked around sharply. Bang, bang, bang. The sound of smoke exploding rang out, and black figures appeared around him. These people were wrapped in black ninja clothes, and their eyes were filled with scarlet light. They were the Black Shadow Ninja Army. Looking at these people, Peter under the mask flashed a trace of shock in his eyes. With his super spider sense, he clearly sensed that these people appeared next to him out of thin air. In other words, they were not human at all. Suddenly, Peter became alert and looked at the many Black Shadow ninjas and said, "Hey, man, who are you?" After the words fell, the Black Shadow ninjas naturally did not answer his question. The sound of long swords being unsheathed rang out in the darkness. The next second, many Black Shadow ninjas rushed towards Peter silently, which made Peter's heart jump. However, at this moment, he had no time to think about anything else. The spider silk on his wrist was quickly fired, rushing towards the Black Shadow ninjas at a speed comparable to that of a bullet. However, the Black Shadow ninjas were not those useless people. They either dodged or chopped quickly dodged the attack of the spider silk and came to Peter's side. In an instant, the sound of the samurai sword cutting through the air rang out, and it rushed straight to Peter's vitals with a whistling sound, making Peter's eyelids jump, and he quickly jumped and dodged to avoid the attack. His speed was extremely fast, and ordinary people could not keep up with his speed, but the Black Shadow Ninja was obviously not an ordinary person. As Peter dodged, many Black Shadow Ninjas quickly caught up, and the cross darts flew out of their hands and directly cut Peter's spider clothes. Peter, who originally wanted to hold back, looked at this scene, and no longer cared to hold back, and quickly began to fight back. After the mutation, his strength and speed had already reached a terrifying level, and his strength was enough to stop a train. Although the Black Shadow Ninja was powerful, its single strength was not enough to compete with it. Therefore, after Peter made a full strength attack, many Black Shadow Ninjas were directly beaten and exploded. However, Peter looked at this scene, but there was no joy on his face, but his expression became more and more ugly, because he found that the number of Black Shadow Ninjas was increasing. After he killed more than a dozen Black Shadow Ninjas, the number of Black Shadow Ninjas had increased to hundreds. Even in the periphery, one after another Black Shadow Ninja appeared. Although he was powerful, he was still surrounded by so many Black Shadow Ninjas. At this moment, the spider suit on his body had become tattered, and bloody wounds appeared on his body. As time passed, his physical strength continued to be consumed, and the whole person began to pant. Sensing the danger, he dared not stay there any longer. The spider silk on his wrist shot out, and his body quickly flew into the air, and left the place. Peter finally breathed a sigh of relief, after escaping from the encirclement of the Black Shadow Ninjas. But just when he thought he was safe, a terrifying scene suddenly appeared in front of him. On the tall buildings in front of him, one by one, Black Shadow Ninjas with scalded eyes kept appearing and looking at his figure. Seeing this, Peter's face froze, and a sense of fear rose from his heart. Just now, hundreds of Black Shadow Ninjas had already put him in danger, and now, there were more than hundreds of Black Shadow Ninjas. Although he didn't know the exact number, a rough glance showed that there were no less than 1,000 people. If he was surrounded by these people, Peter was not sure if he would still be alive. He did not dare to stay at the moment, and his figure swayed in the tall buildings and quickly disappeared from here. As he moved forward quickly, some Black Shadow Ninjas chased him directly. Although they could not use spider silk to sway in the air like Peter, they relied on their terrifying jumping ability to shuttle between the tall buildings, and their speed was not slower than Peter at all. This made Peter, who wanted to get rid of them, helpless. Soon, something happened that made Peter even more desperate. On his way forward, a Black Shadow Ninja jumped directly from the tall building and rushed towards him. Dense cross marks whistled towards him, followed by Black Shadow Ninjas holding samurai swords. Although he avoided most of the attacks with his super spider sense and agility, some of the attacks still fell on him. Blood flowers continued to bloom on his body, causing him to emit a series of muffled groans. At the same time, a cross mark crossed the spider silk on his hand, and the spider silk broke immediately, and Peter's originally vacant figure fell directly to the ground. The sudden change scared Peter to death. The spider silk on his wrist could not help but shoot wildly, and kept slowing down. Finally, his figure fell heavily in an alley, making him breathless for a long time. In the darkness, the figure of the Black Shadow Ninja kept appearing, surrounding him tightly. At this moment, he really had no way to go up to the sky, and no way to enter the earth. Chapter 13 I want you to help me kill someone. Fear struck his heart, and Peter looked at the Shadow Ninjas around him, and swallowed his saliva subconsciously. He became Spider-Man for only a few days. Before that, he was just an ordinary person, and was often bullied in school. In his bones, he was a cowardly person, but he was full of confidence, because of his strong power. But now, the power he relied on has lost its effect, and his cowardly nature has once again taken over. What do you want to do? Don't come over. A roar of suppressed fear came out of his mouth, and the Shadow Ninjas who were approaching suddenly stopped after his voice fell. This scene made Peter stunned, and even a little at a loss. But soon, the footsteps coming from the darkness woke him up, making him realize that it was not his words that worked, but the real master behind him appeared. Suddenly, his eyes could not help but pass through the encirclement of the shadow ninjas and looked at the entrance of the alley, and a figure entered his eyes. The man was dressed in a suit, exuding a lazy temperament, and the smile on his lips gave people a feeling of being in control. As he approached, the black shadow ninjas made way for him and bowed their heads to salute him, just like saluting a king. Seeing this scene, his inner fear was magnified again, and his eyes were fixed on the man. "Good evening, Spider-Man. Let me introduce myself. My name is Tony Stark." Tony came close to Peter and looked down at him. After seeing Tony's face, Peter's mind was suddenly shaken wildly, and an incredible look appeared in his eyes. Tony Stark, a famous playboy, a joke for the citizens after dinner. His news has supported countless tabloids and entertainment reporters. Peter has also seen many of his glorious deeds, and even envied him, and wanted to work for Stark Group. He didn't expect that the two would meet in such a scene, and he didn't expect that the famous playboy was so terrifying in secret. For a moment, the whole person forgot to speak. "It seems that our Spider-Man has recognized my identity," Tony said with a smile on his face. Peter shuddered instantly, and all kinds of conspiracy theories came to his mind. According to the movie routine, if he knew his identity, then he would be doomed. Thinking of this, Peter quickly said, "Mr. Tony, let's talk about it. I don't know what you want to talk to me about. If I can help, I will definitely help." Snap. "That's great. I like to talk to straightforward people." Tony snapped his fingers and said, "Actually, it's nothing big, but I need you to help me kill someone. What do you think?" Tony looked at Peter with a smile, and Peter, who had just patted his chest, suddenly twitched his mouth. Although he has mastered powerful power, he has not killed anyone so far. Because of the death of his uncle, he has been practicing the saying that the greater the ability, the greater the responsibility, and he strives to be a good person. Tony's request undoubtedly posed a problem for him. For a moment, he could not help but make a bitter face and said cautiously, "Sir, can you change your request? No matter what the matter is, it does not have to be solved by killing people. You are not qualified to bargain. You only have two choices now. Either you die or others die. You choose." Tony interrupted him and said casually, "Human life seemed so cheap in his mouth." Seeing this, Peter knew that he had no choice. His face became uncertain. Killing people violated his principles. If he did not kill, his life would not be saved. If he continued to practice his principles according to the original trajectory, he would rather die today than kill innocent people. But there is no if in the world. He has only been Spider-Man for a few days, and has not completely transformed from a small citizen into a superhero. Compared with the lives of others, he cares more about his own life. Therefore, after hesitating for a while, Peter finally said, "Sir, who do you want me to kill?" After the words fell, the smile on Tony's mouth became brighter. "Ivan Vank. I'll give you his information later. All you have to do is to deal with him. Any problem?" Peter shook his head silently, then put on this bracelet. Tony casually threw a bracelet to Peter, and Peter subconsciously caught it. "This is a communicator. I will contact you through it, and I will also pass the information to this bracelet. Also, don't think about not completing the task. This bracelet will explode. That's it. I'm leaving first." After saying that, Tony watched Peter put on the bracelet, turned around and left the alley with a smile. As he left, the surrounding shadow ninjas also merged into the darkness and disappeared, leaving only the decadent Peter in the alley. Outside the alley, in the silver-white sports car, Tony had just got in the car when Jarvis' voice suddenly rang out. "Sir, you have changed a lot." Hearing this, Tony's expression did not change. After all, he was not his predecessor. Jarvis would definitely notice it after spending day and night with him. "Really? Then do you think my change is good or bad?" Tony asked back. Jarvis's calm voice continued to sound. "I'm just an artificial intelligence. I cannot judge whether a person is good or bad, let alone you, sir. But I like you better now. Thank you for your affirmation. It seems that your intelligence has improved again." Tony praised and started the car and left the place. "Sir, can I ask who Ivan Vank is? In my database, sir, it seems that you have never had contact with this person." A person who will die in the future. I just moved his death time forward a little. Tony replied with a smile, but a glimmer flashed in his eyes. He inherited Stark's identity and also inherited his cause and effect, although he did not develop the iron suit. But those guys who have grudges against him will find him sooner or later. Adhering to the idea of striking first and then suffering, Tony prefers to nip trouble in the bud. And Ivan Vank is obviously such a troublesome person. However, the appearance of Natasha made him know that he was being targeted by the people of S.H.I.E.L.D. and it was not suitable for him to take too many actions in the short term. Peter's appearance happened to give him a candidate to solve the problem, so he had the task of killing Ivan. Not only can he solve the problem, but he can also use this incident to make Spider-Man embark on the path of evil. After all, the reason why superheroes are heroes is because they all have their own principles. Spider-Man's principle is obviously to save innocent people. When the principle is broken, the hero is no longer a hero. Chapter 14. The gathering of three major military industry giants. Nothing happened overnight. The next day, Tony came to the company normally. As usual, he ignored Natasha's coquettish gestures and reviewed the documents. After 2 hours, he finally processed all the documents that needed his signature and heaved a sigh of relief. Whoever said that being a boss is comfortable, stand up and beat him to death. In the past few days, Tony roughly calculated that the documents he reviewed had reached more than 100 kilograms. These are all paper documents, not the bamboo slips in the ancient times in his previous life. From this, it can be seen how many things he has to deal with in a day. For a moment, he suddenly regretted getting rid of Abadia. In the past, because this guy managed the company, he could spend his life in wine and women and be a hands-off boss. Now, after getting rid of Abadia, most of the company's affairs can only be handled by himself, which is really annoying. Just when he was emptying his mind, the door of the office was suddenly pushed open. Potts walked in from the outside, and when Tony saw her, he instantly had a headache. "Beautiful Ms. Potts, I think I need to take a break for a while. I authorize you to handle all the company's affairs. What do you think?" Seeing Tony complaining, before she even opened her mouth, Potts couldn't help but roll her eyes. But she also knew how tired he was during this period, so she didn't continue to hit him. "Okay, I'll give you a break after you handle one more thing. Don't complain." "Really? What is it? Tell me." Tony suddenly became excited. He really didn't want to stay in the office any longer. This was definitely good news for him. The military's procurement invitation for this year has been sent. It will start at 3 p.m. You should go and participate and try to get more orders. As he said that, Potts handed Tony an invitation letter and then turned around and left the office in a hurry. As the president, Potts' business is busier than Tony's. After all, Tony only needs to deal with some major matters, but Potts has to manage the entire group. The workload between the two is not at the same level at all. Looking at her leaving back, Tony shook his head. Where did this woman get such a great work enthusiasm? Retracting his thoughts, Tony opened the invitation letter and looked at the content. Naturally, there was nothing substantial in it. But Tony was curious, so he read it with great interest. Military procurement is the main source of profit for major arms companies. Every year's procurement meeting is a feast for major military enterprises. Everyone wants to have a bite at this feast, so the competition is fierce. Even in previous procurement meetings, you can see the heads of major groups fighting on the spot, which can be said to be very lively. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Tony left the group surrounded by a group of bodyguards, got on a Rolls Royce, and rushed to the procurement meeting. When he arrived, it was almost 3 o'clock and the procurement meeting was about to begin. Happy followed him with 2 bodyguards and walked into the venue with him, while the rest of the bodyguards were on standby outside. When entering the venue, a burst of noise suddenly came towards us, and hundreds of people were talking loudly in the venue. Almost 80% of the arms dealers in the United States gathered here. But after Tony walked in, everyone turned to look at him almost at the same time, their eyes filled with awe. As a top military giant in the United States and even the world, it was difficult for Tony to appear without attracting attention. Ignoring most of the people present, Tony came to the front row of the venue. Compared with the crowds in the back, There were only a few people in the front row of the venue, and behind these people stood giants that were no less powerful than Stark Industries. Hammer Industries. Justin Hammer, the helmsman of Hammer Industries, like Stark Industries, mainly engaged in arms business and has long-term cooperation with the Ministry of Defense. It is the main competitor of Stark Industries. Pyme Technologies. Hank. The group founded by Pyme specializes in the research of Pyme particles that can change the size of objects. It also produces weapons, but the proportion is not large. OS Group, a family-owned enterprise, is headed by Norman Osborn, who focuses on biotechnology and has made great achievements in the military industry and has a tendency to surpass Hammer Industries. Avant-Garde Technology, founder Killian, specializes in genetic modification engineering and has little involvement in the arms industry. He is basically here to join in the fun. Roxxon Corporation, the overlord of the US energy industry, started with the oil industry and is one of the largest conglomerates in the world and has spread its tentacles to all walks of life. The people who came from Hammer Industries and OS Group are all the helmsmen, and the people who came from the other companies are vice presidents. After all, this is a military procurement meeting, and their main business is not arms. Even if they come, they can't compete with the three military overlords, Stark Industries, OS Group, and Hammer Industries. Therefore, sending a vice president to join in the fun is enough. With Tony's arrival, the vice presidents of several groups nodded to him, which was considered a greeting. Hammer raised his mouth and said, "Tony, I heard that you almost fell in the desert and couldn't come back. I was ready to open champagne to celebrate, but I didn't expect to see you again. I'm so disappointed." As the main competitor of Stark Industries, the grudge between the two companies can be said to be long-standing. So Hammer was not polite at all. Hearing this, Tony sat in his seat and said sarcastically, "Really? I'm really disappointed. But don't waste your champagne. I think your position as the second in command for thousands of years is about to become unstable. When you drop to the third in command position, I will help you drink it." After saying that, Tony turned his head and glanced at Osborn and nodded with a smile on his face. Osborn's face looked a little ugly. Originally, it was a competition between Hammer Industries and Stark Industries, but Tony dragged the OS Group into it with a word. It would be strange if he could have a good face. Sure enough, Hammer, who had always focused on Tony, also glanced at Osborn silently at this moment. In the past 2 years, the share of the OS Group in the military procurement conference has been increasing, which has posed a threat to Hammer Industries. He originally planned to compete with Tony, but at this moment he suddenly changed his strategy and decided to suppress the OS Group first. Soon, the time came to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and the military procurement conference officially began. Under the auspices of the military procurement personnel, the major military enterprises present received orders one after another. Some were happy because of the large number of orders, while others were frustrated because of the decline in orders. But the one who was the most upset was Osborn. Stark Industries and Hammer Industries, which had been at loggerheads in previous years, joined forces this year to suppress the Osborn Group. The Osborn Group only received 10% of the orders. This result almost made Osborn go berserk. At the same time, it also confirmed an old saying in China: there are no eternal enemies, only eternal interests. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 15: Osborn and the Shadows. When the military procurement meeting was over, Osborn walked out of the meeting with a gloomy face. Looking at Hammer and Tony who were leaving, he wanted to eat them alive. Originally, according to his plan, the OS Group could get at least 20% of the orders at this year's procurement meeting. But because of the joint suppression of the two companies, the OS Group only got half of the planned 10%. This number is worse than in previous years. You know, the annual military expenditure of the United States is as high as $400 billion US. The profit of 1 point is hundreds of millions or even billions of US dollars. Under the joint suppression of Tony and Hammer, the OS Group lost 10 points or even more. The loss is as high as tens of billions of US dollars. Such a huge loss is enough to drive people crazy. What's more, the recent situation of the OS Group is not good. In order to win more military orders and surpass Hammer Industries and Stark Industries, they specially developed military products such as flying skateboards, individual combat armor and human enhancers. A total of $100 billion have been invested, and the company has suffered serious losses, and the major shareholders are extremely dissatisfied with this. Osborn was counting on getting more orders from the military procurement this year to appease the shareholders. But now, everything is gone. Osborn's heart was bleeding when he thought of this. He took a deep breath, endured the heartache, and got in the car to return to the company. At the same time, the specific news of the military procurement meeting was quickly spread through various channels. When Osborn returned to the company, his secretary hurried to his office. "Mr. Osborn, it's bad. All the shareholders are here, waiting for you in the conference room." Hearing this, Osborn's emotions, which had finally stabilized, fluctuated violently again. "Damn it, who asked them to come?" Osborn said viciously. His expression was ferocious, which frightened the female secretary so much that even her tone became stuttering. "Mr. Osborn, they came by themselves." "Well, it seems that they got the specific news of the procurement meeting, and their faces are not very good." Hearing this, Osborn's heart sank, and the thing he was most worried about had happened. "You go down first." He casually sent the secretary away, and the female secretary immediately left the office, as if she had been pardoned. When he was the only one left, the pent-up anger in his heart suddenly burst out. "Fuck. Bastard." A series of ping-pong sounds came from the office, and soon the office became a mess. After a long time, Osborn finally sorted out his emotions, left the office, and walked towards the conference room. When he arrived at the door of the conference room, Osborn pushed the door open and walked in. Swish. In an instant, many shareholders in the conference room turned their heads to look at him at the same time, and the scene was extremely horrifying. Looking at the expressionless faces of everyone, Osborn tried his best to force a smile on his face. "Why are you all here?" Hearing this, the shareholders sitting in the conference room asked without any politeness. "Mr. Osborn, I heard that our group only won 10% of the military procurement orders this year. Is it true?" As soon as the shareholder opened his mouth, he stabbed Osborn in the heart with a knife. He wanted to refute, but he knew that it was useless. These people were all strong and must have received the news, otherwise they would not be here. At that moment, he could only nod his head with difficulty and said, "That's right. But that's because Stark Industries and Hammer Industries have joined forces to suppress us. Otherwise, our purchase orders would never be so few." Osborn tried his best to defend himself, but the shareholders present didn't listen to this. They focused on their interests. They were already dissatisfied with Osborn's strong advocacy of researching individual equipment and human enhancers. In addition, the research was stuck in a bottleneck and the best results were not achieved, which made them even more dissatisfied. Now that military orders have been reduced, the profits of the OS Group have dropped sharply, which eventually became the last straw that broke the camel's back. They chose to tear their faces apart. "Mr. Osborn, you don't need to explain. We joined the OS Group for profit. But now the OS Group obviously can't bring us profit. So many of our shareholders have unanimously decided to withdraw their investment from the OS Group." The cold words turned into the sharpest sword at this moment, piercing Osborn's heart fiercely. "No, you can't do this," Osborn roared. "Because of the research and development, the funds of the OS Group have been running out. If the major shareholders withdraw their investment, the OS Group may go bankrupt. As the helmsman of the OS Group, he will not allow such a thing to happen. Gentlemen, calm down. The OS Group is only in trouble temporarily. As long as it survives, the OS Group will become better and your interests will be guaranteed. Moreover, the OS Group has made a lot of profits for you over the years. You have not suffered any losses at all. It is just not making money for a while now. You can't just abandon the OS Group." Osborn tried his best to save it, and even played the emotional card. But capital is cold, and capitalists are even more indifferent and ruthless. They only have interests in their rise. As for emotions, how much is that thing per pound? Therefore, no matter how Osborn tried to retain him, everyone present did not waver at all. "Mr. Osborn, don't waste your time. Prepare the contract. We will sign it later." After that, the major shareholders got up and left the meeting room one after another, leaving Osborn sitting in his seat in despair. If Tony hadn't appeared, the major shareholders of the OS Group would have withdrawn their capital a year later, but Tony intervened and pushed the OS Group into bankruptcy in advance. Time passed little by little, and OS sat in the conference room for a long time, until it was getting dark and the employees of the OS Group were leaving get off work, and the female secretary walked in cautiously. "Mr. Os, it's time to go." After saying this, Os, who had lifeless eyes, suddenly woke up. He looked at the female secretary with a calm expression and said calmly, "You go first, I'll stay for a while." Hearing this, the female secretary nodded hesitantly and turned to walk out the door. When she reached the door, she subconsciously turned around and looked at Os, but found that he was completely in the shadow. On his originally calm face, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly, giving people a weird feeling. Seeing this scene, the female secretary's heart jumped, and she shuddered subconsciously. She didn't dare to stay any longer, and hurriedly left the place. Soon, the staff of the OS Group left work one after another, and Osborn was the only one left in the entire OS Group. Osborn, who was in the shadows, suddenly stood up and walked out of the meeting room, heading towards the laboratory building of the OS Group. Chapter 16 Spider-Man kills Ivan Vanko. The OS Group has a total of 33 floors, of which the 1st to 15th floors are offices for ordinary employees. The 16th to 25th floors are experimental buildings, which specialize in the research and production of various new products. The research of individual armor and human enhancers is on the 20th floor. Although the research of individual weapons still cannot be mass-produced, mature products have been produced in the laboratory. In contrast, human enhancers are still semi-mature products. They have undergone biological experiments, but have not yet been tested on humans. According to research, all organisms injected with human enhancers will become irritable and full of destructive desires. Because this problem cannot be overcome, human experiments have been delayed. According to Osborn's plan, human enhancers need to be further improved and side effects removed before they can act on the human body. But now, he can't wait any longer. Many shareholders are about to withdraw their investment. He can only hope to convince them to continue to support him and save the OS Group by producing better research results. Therefore, he decided to use himself as a research subject for the next stage of human research. Arriving on the 20th floor, Osborn started the equipment and stepped into the experimental cabin. As the door of the experimental chamber closed, a puff of mist gushed out, and a hint of madness flashed in Osborn's eyes. With no way out, he had to either successfully research the perfect human enhancer or die in the experimental chamber. This was his last struggle. With the determination to die, the human enhancer poured into his body, and a tearing pain quickly rushed into his mind, and a scream resounded through the 20th floor. Liberty City, Beach Villa. Through Jarvis, Tony finally collected Ivan Vank's information. After getting the information, he directly sent it to Peter and called Peter at the same time. "Hello, Spider-Man. Good evening. Did you receive the information? I hope to see this person disappear tonight. I hope you don't let me down." After saying that, without waiting for Peter to reply, Tony hung up the phone directly and asked Jarvis to call up Peter's image. In addition to positioning, the bracelet can also monitor Peter's movements in real time. He is ready to enjoy a superhero's fall. On the other side, at Peter's residence, looking at the hung up phone, Peter looked at the information projected from his wrist in silence. After memorizing all the information in his mind, Peter took out his spider suit from the closet. Looking at the suit that represents justice, Peter smiled self-deprecatingly. He was determined to protect the public, but today, he had to betray his principles and kill an innocent person with his own hands. "I don't want to, I just want to live." Muttering to himself, Peter put on the spider suit, jumped out of the window, and quickly left the house. His figure rippled in the steel jungle, and Peter soon arrived at his destination, this time, Hammer Industries. The target Ivan is the chief weapon designer of Hammer Industries. According to the information, he has been staying in Hammer Industries for many years, so to deal with him, you must first find a way to sneak into Hammer Industries. As a top military giant, Hammer Industries has extremely strong security forces. Even the world's top soldiers can't sneak in quietly. But this can only deal with some mortals. Although Peter's power is not as good as that of gods, it is beyond the scope of mortals. In front of him, the security force of Hammer Industries has become a complete joke. With the help of spider silk alone, Peter easily reached the top floor of Hammer Industries. With the help of the spider barbs on his palms, he easily opened a hole in the glass on the top floor of the Hammer Industries building that was large enough for one person to pass through and climbed in. Then he entered the elevator and went straight to the -3rd floor of Hammer Industries. This is the weapons research and development department of Hammer Industries, and it is also where Ivan is. In the villa, Tony tasted red wine and watched the whole process of Peter's infiltration in the video and smiled. It seems that our Spider-Man is better than I thought. Jarvis, based on his performance, build a strength file and try to deduce the direction of his strength improvement. Okay sir, I have started recording. Jarvis responded, and in the video, Peter had successfully reached the -3rd floor of Hammer Industries. Ding. The elevator door slowly opened. More than a dozen black gun muzzles appeared in front of Peter's eyes, and Peter's pupils shrank immediately. His body subconsciously bounced up and grabbed the top of the elevator. The next second, gunfire broke out, and bullets whizzed in an instant. The horrible burning sensation caused black marks on his spider suit. Without time to think, a spider web shot out from his wrist, covering the people at the elevator door and interrupting their continued firing. Taking advantage of this opportunity, he quickly left the narrow space of the elevator, and his speed was maximized. He knocked out the people of the elevator in trance in a few seconds. At the moment they fainted, an alarm sounded throughout the institute. With his strong hearing, Peter heard a dense sound of footsteps coming quickly. For a moment, he couldn't help but curse. Fuck, how did they find out? He was very careful when sneaking in, and didn't make any noise. He couldn't figure out where he was exposed. Peter thought irritably, but he didn't know that as a research and development center for new weapons, the security here was more than 3 times stricter than outside. There were people guarding the elevator in trance 24 hours a day, and they could always see the scene in the elevator. Although he was powerful, he was a rookie and had little experience, so he didn't realize this at all. So after he entered the elevator, he was already discovered, which led to the scene of the door opening and killing. Without time to think about how he was exposed, Peter quickly went deep into the research department. Along the way, he avoided the siege of a large number of guards with his agility, and soon found the target of this trip, Ivan Vank, as the villain in the second part of Iron Man. Although he is not low in intelligence, he has not developed the Morning Whip armor, and his strength is not much stronger than that of ordinary people. When Ivan saw Peter appear in front of him, he was stunned. He naturally heard the alarm of the research department. In his opinion, it should be someone who came to steal the blueprints of new weapons and was discovered, which had nothing to do with him. But he never thought that the target of the person who came was actually himself, which made him completely unprepared. Wait. Ivan opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but Peter didn't give him a chance at all. He went up and grabbed his neck and twisted it hard. With a click, he got his lunchbox directly. Chapter 17. The Green Goblin came and ran away. Before coming here, Peter had done all kinds of psychological preparation and had imagined the scenes where he couldn't bear to do it. But when he was discovered and could face a large number of guards at any time, he suddenly found that all his expectations became a joke. In order to avoid being besieged by the guards, he twisted Ivan's neck without hesitation. This development made him feel confused for a moment. He didn't know whether he was forced by Tony to do such a thing without any burden, or whether he himself had no great resistance to killing. The confusion did not last too long. When he was awakened by the footsteps, he threw all his thoughts behind his head and began to flee from here. At this time, in the villa, Tony's face also looked a little stunned. He didn't expect that the matter would end so easily. He was ready to watch a big drama of Peter's inner struggle. Unexpectedly, Peter acted more decisively than he imagined. Jarvis, was I deceived by this guy? Looking at his decisive appearance, it doesn't look like the first time he killed someone. Tony said speechlessly. Jarvis's voice without any emotion suddenly sounded. Sir, according to research, everyone has a devil in their heart, which is a collection of negative human emotions. Some people lock up their devils, and they are good people in the eyes of ordinary people. Some people release their devils, and they are bad people in the eyes of ordinary people. According to my observation, Peter in the video is in the stage of locking up his devil. If you hadn't intervened, he would have locked up the devil in his heart and become a good person. But you gave him a key and let him release the devil. So, everything in this matter is caused by you, sir. Jarvis analyzed for a while and finally put the blame on himself. Tony couldn't help but twitch his mouth. Good guy, are you still with me? How can you say that about the creator? Tony decided to refuse to communicate with Jarvis for the time being and prepared to go to bed. The matter was over and he didn't need to watch it anymore. Although the guards of Hammer Industries were good, they couldn't trap Spider-Man, so he was naturally too lazy to continue watching. But just as he got up, Jarvis' voice suddenly rang out. Alarm, alarm, approaching UFO detected. Tony stopped walking and turned to look at the big screen. The scene on the screen had changed to the outside of his villa. In the distance, a green figure was approaching his villa quickly on a skateboard-like flying vehicle. Tony even saw the devil mask on the face of the person. Suddenly, Tony raised his eyebrows and smiled. Interesting, Green Goblin Osborn, you came to me before I found you. The best candidates for forming the Dark Alliance are naturally the famous villains in Marvel. These people are born with a dark heart, which is much easier than recruiting superheroes. So after seeing Osborn at the military procurement meeting, Tony made up his mind to pull this guy into the Dark Alliance. However, because this guy has not yet transformed, Tony only intends to give him a little stimulation to speed up his transformation. But unexpectedly, things progressed so quickly. He only stimulated this guy during the day, but he turned into the Green Goblin and came to him at night. Life is really full of surprises. With a smile on his lips, Tony's eyes also showed a hint of coldness. Recruiting villains is different from recruiting superheroes. Superheroes still need to be guided, but villains can be defeated directly. Just when Tony found Osborn outside the villa, Osborn looked at Tony's villa and showed a crazy smile under his mask. In order to save the Osborn group, he had to conduct human experiments himself. The experiment went unexpectedly smoothly, and he perfectly strengthened his body, but at the same time, he was also affected by the potion and his personality changed. In fact, it can be said that he was divided into two people. One is Osborn, the helmsman of the Osborn group, with a calm personality. The other is Osborn, the Green Goblin. And now, he is Osborn, the Green Goblin. Osborn has many enemies and many people he hates, but if he has to make a list, Tony will definitely be at the top of the list. If it weren't for him, the Osborn group could have won more military orders, and shareholders would not have withdrawn their capital in advance, forcing the Osborn group into a dead end. If it weren't for him, he wouldn't have personally gone into battle as a test subject to experiment with human enhancers. Although all the hidden dangers had been buried after he ordered the development of new equipment and human enhancers. But Tony was the fuse that detonated this bomb. So, he turned into the Green Goblin. He wanted revenge and sent this guy who pushed the Os group to a dead end to hell. With the desire to kill in his mind, Osborn threw 2 pumpkin grenades and rushed towards Tony's villa. As a new type of grenade that the Os group spent a lot of money to research, the power of the pumpkin grenade is enough to rival the power of a 20-kilogram TNT explosion. 2 pumpkin grenades are enough to blow up Tony's villa and bury him alive. But at the moment he threw the pumpkin grenade, one after another Black Shadow Ninja walked out of the darkness, with scalded eyes staring at Osborn. The next second, 2 cross marks were thrown out from the hands of a Black Shadow Ninja and hit the pumpkin grenade accurately. Bang! 2 violent explosions sounded. Fireworks shone in the darkness, illuminating the night. What is that? Osborn frowned and thought. But before he had more time to think, a group of Black Shadow Ninjas jumped towards him. The sharp edge of the samurai sword shone in the dark night, and the sword light slashed towards him. Osborn, wearing armor, did not dodge or evade the attacks of many Black Shadow Ninjas. Zizzy! A burst of sparks appeared on his armor. The seemingly hard armor actually had tiny wounds under the cutting of the samurai sword. Upon noticing this scene, Osborn's face changed immediately. This is a battle armor made of special alloy. What kind of knife is that? It's so sharp. While thinking, Osborn used the mobility of the flying skateboard to quickly escape from the encirclement of the Black Shadow ninjas. He originally planned to rush into the villa directly, but looking at the dense Black Shadow ninjas outside the villa, he couldn't help but have a trace of retreat in his heart. He found that things seemed to be different from what he imagined. These guys who came out of nowhere were actually guarding Tony. Although their individual strength was not as good as his, there were too many of them. After watching for a long time in midair, Osborn finally disappeared into the night sky on his flying skateboard. Inside the villa, Tony looked at Osborn retreating and smiled playfully. He's running away now? Interesting. Chapter 18, Spider-Man's Dark Path. The danger is over, sir. What are those things? Jarvis' voice rang out in the villa. His tone was as calm as ever, but Tony sensed the curiosity in his words. He turned and walked towards the bedroom, smiling. Just a group of creatures from the dark. You'll see more in the future. After answering, Tony closed the door and rested. What happened just now did not leave any trace in his heart. One night passed quickly. The next day, Tony did not go to the company as before. After all, he had agreed to take a holiday, so how could he not keep his word? After breakfast, he drove his silver sports car out of the villa, and Happy and the others were left behind. Happy was helpless about this. His boss had become more detached since he returned from his disappearance, and he never took them with him wherever he went, which made him helpless. In the city, a coffee shop. Tony was sitting by the window. A cup of steaming coffee was emitting mist on the table, and suddenly a figure walked in from the door. Order number 36. Hey, please hurry up. The young man urged the front desk, looking at his watch from time to time, showing a little anxiety. At this moment, a familiar voice came from behind him. Hey, little Peter, long time no see. After the words fell, Peter suddenly turned his head and looked behind him. After seeing Tony's figure, his face suddenly changed. Tony looked at him with a smile on his face, picked up the coffee on the table, and gestured to him, and smiled. Do you want to sit down and have a cup? Hearing this, Peter hesitated for a moment, and finally walked to sit opposite Tony. Sir, what do you want to talk to me about? Our transaction should be completed, right? His face looked a little helpless. Peter didn't have any good feelings for this guy who forced him to kill. But helpless, his life was still in his hands, so he could only surrender obediently. TSK, Spider-Man, the patron saint of New York, has fallen to the point of delivering food. It's really surprising. Tony sighed and drank a sip of coffee. His expression looked like he deserved a beating. Taking a deep breath, Peter suppressed the impulse in his heart and spoke again. Sir, it's okay, I'm leaving. I still have to deliver food, and I'm going to be late. Don't worry. Tony put down the coffee in his hand. I have another deal. Are you interested in listening to it? No interest. Peter refused without thinking. But Tony's unhurried voice continued to sound, ignoring his refusal at all, making his face full of helplessness. Help me catch someone, the helmsman of the O-Style group, Norman Osborn. Catch him alive, and bring him to me. Shit, I refuse. Peter stood up excitedly. No wonder he was so excited. His good friend Harry Osborn was Norman Osborn's son. How could he attack his good brother's family? Seeing him like this, Tony smiled and said, $10 million. As long as you help me catch him back, I'll give you $10 million. Think about how you live now, poor and destitute, and you don't even dare to confess your love to the girl you like. But with this 10 million, you can change your current situation. You can buy a big house for your family and go on a trip with your loved one. From now on, you don't have to rush around for life. Think about these beautiful things. Do you still find it hard to accept? Tony was like a devil at this moment, constantly tempting Peter and leading him to fall. Peter, who was so excited just now, sat down again at this moment. His face looked uncertain. His thoughts kept wandering as Tony talked, and the figures of Mary, Jane, and Aunt May kept flashing in his mind. At this moment, he hesitated, no longer as firm as before. But, I can't hurt Harry, he is my best brother, Peter said with a tangled face. Tony made a new offer with a smile on his face, 20 million. Besides, I don't plan to hurt him, so you don't need to feel guilty. If I want to kill him, he won't survive tonight. What do you think? Thinking about Tony's ability, Peter was silent, which also meant that he was moved. After an unknown amount of time, Peter finally nodded. Okay, I promise you. But I want to know why. You obviously have the ability. Why do you still come to me? Peter said seriously. Tony's smile became even bigger. Don't get me wrong. I just want to improve your life. After all, Spider-Man has to struggle for a living like ordinary people. Don't you think it's ridiculous? You are a superpower, surpassing 99% of ordinary people in the world. In the past, Peter would definitely refute this. He thought he was no different from other people, except that he had some special abilities. But now, he felt like he had suddenly realized something. Yes, I'm a superpower. Why do I have to struggle for a living? Order number 36 is ready. A voice came from the front desk. The voice that sounded normal in the past, but Peter felt it was particularly harsh at this moment. The person in front of him could quietly enjoy the morning tea time, so why did he have to keep running around? Thinking of this, he felt annoyed. However, he still forced himself to suppress the annoyance in his heart, went to the front desk, picked up the coffee and left here. Tony looked through the window and watched Peter riding away on the electric donkey, with a smile flashing in his eyes. There is only one time and countless times to break the bottom line. If you can say that you forced Vank to kill Ivan before, then you don't have the slightest intention of forcing him now. Moreover, he could feel the reluctance in Peter's heart when he stood up. Obviously our Spider-Man has gone astray, and there will never be that passionate and kind little spider again. Thinking of this, Tony couldn't help but sigh. What's wrong with this world? The number of bad people is increasing, and the number of good people is decreasing. It's really interesting. Putting down a dollar bill, Tony left the cafe, got on the sports car, and drove away. The roar of the sports car echoed in the street, attracting envious glances from many passers-by. Some people say that a person's character is innate, but Tony thinks that a person's character is brought about by the acquired environment. What kind of things you experience will determine what kind of character you become. When Peter experienced something he had never experienced before, whether voluntarily or by force, he was destined to never become Spider-Man again. Therefore, his path to evil was set. Then who would be his next target? Tony drove the sports car, and many figures in his memory flashed through his mind. Chapter 19. I picked up a green fat man for free. Driving a sports car and wandering around the bustling New York City, Tony was thinking about where to go today. It was hard to get a day off, and he couldn't waste this great time. But as the saying goes, plans can't keep up with changes. Just as he passed a building, a huge explosion suddenly sounded. Boom. Countless pieces of rubble fell from the sky and smashed into the crowd on the street. The originally prosperous and peaceful streets instantly turned into a meat grinder. Countless corpses and broken arms flew everywhere, and many people were directly smashed into meat paste by the huge rocks falling from the sky, which was extremely terrifying. Squeak. A quick brake sounded, and the car driven by Tony stopped in place. And in front of him, a huge rock fell with a bang. Bang. Almost, he would have turned into a meat pie like everyone else. Looking at this scene, Tony was not afraid. With the horse charm, he was half immortal. As long as he didn't die instantly, the horse charm could restore him, so he didn't have too much fear. He was just curious, what happened? As he thought, Tony got out of the car and looked up at the building above his head. Suddenly, a huge figure entered his eyes, causing his pupils to shrink instantly. Boom. A loud explosion sounded, and a green figure fell from the sky, with a huge impact on the ground, shaking hundreds of meters in radius, and cracks spread in all directions like spider webs. The giant was angry, and roared to the sky. A terrifying sound wave spread throughout the Manhattan Shield, and the pedestrians who had finally escaped fainted under this roar. Only Tony was not affected, and watched the scene safely. After the roar, the giant ignored the scene, and ran towards the city farther away. All obstacles along the way were torn or discarded by him. Looking at the giant's back, Tony's mouth twitched constantly, and a speechless emotion surged in his heart. Why did the green fat man come out at this time? Can we still have fun? As a butt hero in Marvel, the appearance of the green fat man instantly unbalanced the strength of the Marvel world. Tony didn't continue to be in a daze, and after sorting out his emotions, he quickly drove to follow. Although the appearance of the green fat man was a little unexpected, this is the real world after all, not a movie, so it is not unacceptable. What he is thinking about now is what benefits he can get after the green fat man appears. Recruit him into the Dark Alliance? Come on, this guy's a time bomb, and I don't want to clean his ass every few days. When he grew up to the later stage, it was a little better. This guy could still control himself. Now, this guy is completely a lunatic. After the transformation, he can't tell friend from foe. Tony is afraid that, after he recruits this guy will kill him as soon as possible. Therefore, the green fat man is basically out of the Dark Alliance. However, his value is not limited to that terrifying strength. In the later period, someone used his blood to replicate genes and created a guy called Abomination, a copy of the green fat man. Although there is no infinite improvement of the genuine green fat man, which can be called a bug, it is stable. Before and after the transformation, he can control himself, and his strength is still strong. Therefore, Tony was moved. He didn't have to look for those superheroes. He could also make his own. His thoughts were turning quickly in his mind, but Tony's speed didn't slow down at all. He drove the sports car very fast, shuttling through the dilapidated urban area. Before he got close to the area where the green fat man was, he had already heard the green fat man's unbridled roar. As the saying goes, when the sky is crazy, there will be rain, and when people are crazy, there will be disasters. The green fat man was so arrogant that some people couldn't stand it. General Ross, the old father-in-law of the green fat man, directly mobilized a large number of troops to beat up the green fat man. When Tony came to the edge of a battlefield, he saw a large number of soldiers holding weapons and firing wildly. Tanks kept rushing to the battlefield, and the roar of artillery fire resounded throughout the city. Under the bombardment of the tanks, the green fat man kept retreating, but everything was just a superficial phenomenon. When the smoke dissipated, the green fat man was fine, still full of energy, and by the way, he tore a tank to help cheer him up. Looking at this scene, Tony decisively found a high-rise building to watch the battle from a high position. He had no intention of getting involved. With his small arms and legs, he couldn't even withstand a punch from the green fat man, so he didn't want to go up and try. The battle continued, and the soldiers suffered heavy losses. Under the iron fist of the green fat man, these well-trained elite soldiers were like children and had no power to resist. Just look at the green fat man, like playing whack-a-mole, punching a bloody meat pie. In just over 10 minutes, his surroundings were covered with blood and flesh. The cruelty was so severe that even Tony couldn't bear to look at it, and at the same time he couldn't help but complain about the brain-twitching stuff of S.H.I.E.L.D. This guy killed so many people, and he can still be a superhero. What's he thinking? While complaining, Tony watched with relish, and finally, the green fat man's transformation time came. The law of conservation of energy belongs to the basic law of the universe, and the green fat man can't ignore this law, no matter how buggy he is. After raging for so long, he finally withered. At that moment, the green fat man quickly tore through the military's encirclement, ran into the distance, and disappeared in front of everyone. At the alley, the alley was full of domestic garbage and the stench was dense. Bruce staggered and hid in the alley, looking at his hands with fear. Although he lost his mind after turning into a green fat man, he still kept his memory. After he regained his human form, he remembered that he had just killed a lot of people. Thinking of this, Bruce couldn't help but retching. And just as he lowered his head, a pair of scarlet eyes appeared in the shadows of the alley, and then a group of black shadow ninjas walked out of the darkness. When Bruce looked up again, he saw that he was surrounded by a group of guys in black robes. Suddenly, a trace of fear emerged in his eyes. Now he was not the invincible green fat man, but just an ordinary scientific researcher who was powerless. "Who are you?" Bruce's terrified voice sounded. The black shadow ninjas naturally didn't answer. One of them flashed in front of him, and a knife fell directly on his neck. Suddenly, Bruce fainted gorgeously. Bruce was easily taken down. A sound of footsteps came from outside the alley, and Tony's figure appeared in the alley. Looking at Bruce, his face was full of smiles. Things went more smoothly than he imagined. He easily took down the Hulk. So happy. Take him away. With a wave of his hand, a black shadow ninja came forward and carried Bruce, while the others disappeared into the darkness. Throwing Bruce into the sports car, Tony drove away. He came out for a walk and picked up a green fat man for free. This luck is really amazing. Chapter 20. The easy one. Reed Richards. Tony took the green fat man back to the villa and injected him with a strong coma. Some of the inventions of his predecessor could make a person sleep for a month. In order to ensure that this guy would not have any problems, Tony sent him to the nutrition cabin to ensure his physical functions. After doing all this, a difficult problem appeared in Tony's mind again. Who should I find to copy this guy's genes? I can't do it. Even my predecessor can't do it. After all, my predecessor's main focus is not on this area. I can also ask Mr. Blue in the movie to help me, but this guy is under General Ross, and asking him is almost equivalent to exposing himself. He doesn't want to confront the US military so quickly, so this option can only be abandoned. In addition to him, there are many genius scientists, but most of them can't be found by himself. After eliminating one candidate, Tony quickly locked the target, Reed Richards. This is a scientist who is more talented than his predecessor, proficient in machinery, engineering, artificial intelligence, alien biology, physics, genetics and other disciplines. He applies for countless patents every year, and each invention is at the forefront of the current technological level. In addition, he has another identity, the future superhero, Mr. Fantastic. With his ability, he will definitely be able to help himself copy enough green fat genes. Of course, the reason for choosing him is not only that he is good enough, but also because he is the easiest to grasp now. He is undoubtedly a genius, and geniuses have their own pursuits, and his pursuit is to crack the secrets of human genetic genes. But human genes are so vast that even gods may not be able to figure it out. Therefore, because the research has not made any progress, his scientific research funds have been cut by the government without limit. According to his memory, this guy's now looking for people to invest in his project, but unfortunately all major consortiums are not optimistic about him. After all, this field is really hopeless. Capital only values interests. Although Reed is a genius, they don't care if you are a genius or not, if you can't bring them benefits. And it just so happens that Tony lacks everything except money, so Reed is undoubtedly a suitable target. What's more, after he mutates, he can directly absorb him into the Dark Alliance. Why not do a deal that kills two birds with one stone? After determining the target, Tony spoke immediately. Jarvis, help me contact Reed Richards. Okay, sir, I'm connecting. On the other side, in an office, Reed was sitting on a chair with a tired face. His research had reached a bottleneck, not because of anything else, but because he had no money. The research on human genetics is a bottomless pit of money. Although he has sold many patents and earned a lot of money, it is still a drop in the bucket for his own research. He has not slept well for almost a month in order to attract investment, but unfortunately, there has been little effect. No company or consortium is willing to invest in him. Should I really give up? Reed asked himself, but the unwillingness in his heart made him give up. Just when he was in a state of irritation, the phone on the table suddenly rang again. Ding-ling-ling. The ringing of the phone echoed in the office, but Reed seemed not to hear it, and didn't even look at it. For the sake of research, he mortgaged his property. During this period, the bank's debt collection calls came one after another. He has developed a phobia of phone rings, so he didn't want to answer them at all. However, this time the call was particularly persistent, ringing for 10 minutes without interruption, as if it would keep ringing if he didn't answer. Helplessly, Reed could only answer the phone. He was ready to be harassed for debt. However, the imagined debt collection voice did not sound, but a slightly speechless voice. Mr. Reed, is your business so busy? You don't even have time to answer the phone. Tony said speechlessly. If Reed didn't answer the phone again, he would almost curse his mother. What's wrong with him? The sponsor came to the door and didn't provide for him properly, and he dared not to answer the phone. If it weren't for Reed being a genius, he must let him experience the cruelty of capital. Who are you? Reed's puzzled voice sounded. I want to invest in your research. Do you have time to talk? After the words fell, Reed was stunned for a moment. Tony's words sounded like the sound of nature to him at this moment. God knows how much effort he has spent in this period of time to attract investment. He thought there was no hope, but suddenly there was a sudden turn of events. For a moment, Reed's tone became a little trembling. "May I know who you are, sir?" Although he was very happy, Reed also knew that the investment he needed was not a small amount, and ordinary people were not qualified at all. Tony Stark. Tony gave his name, and Reed immediately laughed silently. Although he was obsessed with research, he had also heard of Tony's reputation, the largest arms dealer in the United States, and the top consortium in New York. It can be said that the name Tony Stark is a symbol of wealth. At that moment, Reed nodded repeatedly and said, "I have time. I have time. Mr. Tony, you tell me the place. I will go there now." His tone was urgent, as if he was afraid that Tony would run away. Tony was not polite and directly gave his address and hung up the phone. Half an hour later, in Liberty City, outside Tony's beach villa, Reed in a suit appeared at the door. Before he could knock on the door of the villa opened, and Jarvis' voice sounded instantly. "Welcome, Mr. Reed. Mr. Tony is waiting for you on the balcony. Please go straight ahead." Listening to Jarvis's instructions, Reed did not show any surprise. He also has an artificial intelligence, so there is nothing to be surprised about. Maybe this is a standard configuration of scientific research leaders. Everyone has an artificial intelligence. On the balcony, Tony was dressed in casual clothes, leaning on a lounge chair to bask in the sun, and a bottle of Romanican tea was placed on the table. Sunshine, sea, breeze, everything seemed so comfortable. When Reed arrived, Tony casually pointed to the seat next to him and said, "Sit down, have a drink first, and chat slowly." "Okay, thank you for the invitation." Reed smiled and responded, and then sat next to Tony. At this moment, he was not as impatient as he showed on the phone, but seemed calm. The two looked at the sea, tasted red wine, and looked at each other. As top scientists in the United States and famous geniuses in the outside world, this was the first time they met. One was uninhibited, chic and free, and the other was elegant and polite. It felt like a king meeting a king. Soon, the red wine in the glass was empty, and the two finally started to talk about business. "I wonder how much Mr. Tony plans to invest." Reed put down his glass and asked, with a hint of anxiety in his eyes. Chapter 21. You can't refuse a benefit. Seeing Reed's eyes, Tony's mouth curled up a smile. "How much do you want?" "The more the better." Reed was not polite. Tony immediately raised his eyebrows. "Then how much does it cost to acquire your team?" Tony asked a question that Reed didn't expect. Reed couldn't help but frown. He came to discuss investment, not to sell himself. "Mr. Tony, I don't work for anyone or any company. I only accept business investment," he said seriously, but Tony smiled nonchalantly. "Everyone has his own price. If you don't agree, it only means that the price I offer is not enough. How about this? I'll make an offer, you listen to it." After the words fell, without giving Reed a chance to refuse, Tony directly made an offer. 50 billion me gold research funds per year. You have absolute autonomy, and no one, including me, will interfere with your research. In addition, you and your team will enjoy half of the profits from your research. What do you think of this price? Tony looked at Reed with a smile on his face, while Reed was calm and didn't say anything. It's not that he didn't react, but that he didn't know what to say. Although he had been extremely resolute before, Tony gave too much 50 billion me gold, more than his previous research funds combined, and this was only for 1 year. Absolute autonomy ensured that his research would not be interfered with in any way, just like what he had now. Although half of the research profit was shared by the entire team, it was still much higher than it was now. Other consortiums that invested in his research would take at least 80% of the profit, and the rest would be for him and his team. A 30% profit increase represents a profit of 10 billion or 10 billion me gold. He wanted to refuse firmly as before, and stick to his bottom line, but when the words of refusal came to his lips, he couldn't say them. So, he could only remain silent. Tony was not surprised by his reaction. People pursue nothing more than fame and fortune in their lives. This is a real world, not a movie in the previous life. Superheroes are also people. They also need money and food. Do you really think everyone can generate electricity for love and protect all mankind? Stop it. Everyone is busy. It is believable that some individuals have lofty ideals, but is it possible that a group of extraordinary people get together just to babysit for others for free? It can only be said that the movies in the previous life forcefully endowed many heroes with lofty ideals for the development of the plot. In fact, everyone is an ordinary person, at most an ordinary person with some superpowers. Who doesn't like money, status, and beauty? Can everyone really become a saint? What do I need to pay? Reed asked in a dry voice. He no longer thought about refusing anything. He got such a big benefit, he didn't believe that he didn't need to pay anything. It's very simple. Just work for me all the time, and I need your help with something, and you can't refuse it. Anything else? Reed asked. Tony shrugged. No, that's all. After speaking, Reed fell silent and thought again. There is no doubt that, as long as he accepts this contract, he and his team will be tied to Tony for the rest of their lives. So, is it worth it? This is a question worth thinking about, and he also needs to discuss it with his team members. Thinking of this, Reed apologized. Mr. Tony, I need to go back and think about it. No problem, I'll give you 3 days. Come to me when you're ready. Hearing this, Reed nodded, then got up and left the villa. Along the way, Reed's head seemed a little dizzy. The huge benefits made him lose his usual calmness. When he returned to his company, he immediately called his team. Soon, 2 men and 1 woman appeared in the conference room. They were also members of the future Fantastic Four: Susan Storm, Johnny Storm, and Ben Grimm. The 3 looked at Reed's calm expression and thought he was still worried about research funding, so they spoke up. Reed, is the company out of money? We still have some savings here. We will call you later. Let's hold on for a while. After listening to what they said, Reed looked up at everyone and then shook his head. Don't worry about the research funding. I have found someone to invest. I'm just hesitating whether to accept it, so I asked you to come and discuss it. After he finished speaking, several people were overjoyed. Johnny said directly, what is there to discuss? It's a good thing that someone invested. Just agree to it. Ben was more stable than Johnny. Looking at Reed's calm face, he asked, is it because they want too much? It doesn't matter. As long as someone invests, we should give up some of our interests. That's right, Reed. Don't think too much about us. If you think it's appropriate, just agree to it. Susan also spoke to comfort him. Obviously, she and Ben had the same idea. Seeing everyone thinking about him, Reed couldn't help but smile. No, the other party's conditions are very loose, but he doesn't just want to invest in a project, he wants to invest in our team. After that, Reed explained Tony's conditions to everyone, and the price they had to pay. After listening, everyone fell silent. Needless to say, no one could resist the temptation. However, they were a little hesitant to be tied to one person in the future. After all, no one could tell what would happen in the future. After a long time, Johnny took the initiative to speak. Ahem. Everyone, I wonder if you know something. Stark Industries has been delisted. Huh. Everyone looked at him in confusion. Johnny continued, not long ago, Stark Industries was delisted and privatized, which means that our investor Tony holds 100% of Stark Industries shares. As a military-industrial enterprise, do you think Stark Industries could go bankrupt overnight? At this point, everyone realized what Johnny meant. After Stark Industries was privatized, unless Stark Industries' own business had problems, resulting in a broken capital chain and the company going bankrupt, it would basically not be defeated. Military industry is one of the most profitable industries in the world, and the US military spends a lot of money every year to purchase and replace equipment. So, basically, unless the US is destroyed, Stark Industries is unlikely to go bankrupt. Of course, it is not absolute, but the probability of problems due to other reasons is extremely small. So do they still need to worry about the future they are worried about? After thinking about this, everyone's face suddenly became less dull, and they became visibly relaxed. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel. Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 22. The Little Spider Who Cried After Being Tricked. I think it's not bad to agree to this condition. Ben was the first to make a suggestion. Compared with the other three who were single, he was already married. After knowing the stability of Stark Industries, he had almost no worries. After he spoke, Johnny followed closely and agreed to Tony's conditions. Susan did not express her opinion at the first time, but continued to look at Reed. The two are still in a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, and she listens to Reed. And Reed happened to look at her at this moment, and a smile appeared on his face. He joked, "In fact, after listening to his conditions, I was already tempted, but I was worried that you would not agree, so I didn't agree directly." After he finished speaking, everyone laughed. At this point, everyone voted unanimously to work for Tony. The next day, Reed came to Tony's villa again. "It seems that you have thought it through," Tony said with a smile. Reed nodded directly. Since he had already decided, there was no need to drag it out. "You will be my boss from now on. I wonder when we will sign the contract." "Sign it now." Tony took out a contract that had been prepared long ago. Reed read it carefully. After confirming that there were no problems with all the terms, he directly signed his name. After signing the contract, Reed's attitude immediately changed. "Boss, when will our research funds arrive?" Seeing his anxious look, Tony said directly, "It will take some time to prepare. It will arrive in 3 days. But you have to do something for me first." "What is it?" Reed asked in confusion. Tony did not explain, but stood up and said, "Follow me." Then he took the lead and walked towards the underground laboratory in his villa. Reed quickly followed, and the two soon arrived in the laboratory. Reed also saw Bruce sleeping in the nutrition cabin. Suddenly, Reed's face changed, and he said in some doubt, "Boss, what is this?" "Bruce Banner, a green fat man who can transform. You should have seen the news." When Tony said this, Reed immediately remembered the hottest news at the moment. The green monster ravaged Nio, causing heavy casualties among the citizens. Yesterday, this news had spread throughout the United States. Even though Reed didn't pay much attention to the news, he had seen this news. "Boss, do you mean that he is the monster that ravaged Nio?" "That's right. I was at the scene at the time, and I brought him back after he fell into a coma." Tony said it easily, but Reed was amazed when he heard it. He had seen the news report. The horror of the green fat man made people dare not approach him at all. His boss actually took him back to his villa while he was unconscious. He was really a master of death. However, after sighing, Reed's eyes turned hot when he looked at Bruce. No scientist can refuse to study the green fat man, and Reed is no exception. After figuring out that the guy in front of him was not an ordinary person, Reed asked directly, "Boss, what do you want me to do?" "It's very simple. Copy this guy's genes and create a god." Tony looked at Reed and said word by word, and Reed's body trembled suddenly, not with fear, but with excitement. After seeing the destructive power of the green fat man, who wouldn't want to have this power? And the idea of creating a god made him even more excited. At that moment, Reed patted his chest and said, "Boss, don't worry, leave it to me. I will definitely dig out the secret behind him." In response, Tony nodded with satisfaction. "Okay, then you stay here and deal with this guy. I'll give you a hint. You can start with his blood." "I understand." Reed responded and went straight to work. Tony didn't bother him and left the institute directly. He believed that Reed would not let him down, and he would soon reap the results. On this side, Tony was busy getting the power of the green fat man, and on the other side, Peter was also planning how to capture Osborn alive. Although I feel a little sorry for Harry, it's still the old saying that when the valve of desire is opened, it's not so easy to close it. With the help of his friendship with Harry, Peter easily figured out where his family lived. When night fell, Peter, wearing a spider suit, left home again. Peter's figure swayed among the high-rise buildings. He soon came to the wealthy area of Manhattan's Shield. Looking at the luxurious villas and manors, Peter, who had no idea in the past, had already developed a feeling of envy and jealousy in his heart. He was a superhuman. Why did he have to squeeze into the slums while these people could live decently here? If a blackening progress bar appeared at this time, then the pattern of +1+1+1 would appear constantly on Peter's head. According to the intelligence he had gathered during the day, Peter successfully found Harry's villa. Using spider silk to hang upside down in the trees outside the villa, Peter quickly figured out the situation in the villa. A middle-aged man in pajamas, several servants, and Harry was not at home. Needless to say, Peter locked his eyes on the middle-aged man and looked at Norman sitting on the sofa reading a newspaper. Osborne. Peter did not hesitate at all and launched a surprise attack directly. Bang! The glass was directly shattered. Peter, who thought Norman was an ordinary person, chose to take forceful action and broke into the villa. Seeing Peter breaking into the villa, the servants in the villa screamed loudly. Peter had already quickly come to Norman, grabbed his collar, and tried to take him away by force. But at this moment, a fist suddenly hit his chest. Because he was unprepared, he didn't react at all, and his body was smashed out like a cannonball. Bang! Bang! A sound spread throughout the villa, and Peter fell to the ground with his back bent, surrounded by debris. At this moment, his mind was confused. Who am I? Where am I? And what am I doing? Where is the ordinary person you said, and where is it easy? A punch knocked me more than 10 meters away. Is this also called an ordinary person? A series of doubts emerged from his mind, and he stood up and looked in the direction of Norman, enduring the pain. I don't know when Norman, who was sitting on the sofa just now, disappeared. Peter quickly looked around, searching for Norman's traces. At this moment, a strange laugh resounded through the villa. The next second, a guy wearing a green skateboard and a demon mask rushed directly towards Peter. Seeing this scene, Peter's pupils shrank, and his body twisted quickly, but he was still a little slow, and was hit on the waist by the flying skateboard. Puff! Peter's throat was sweet and a bloody taste filled his mouth. Without time to think about it, he injured the pain, and rushed directly outside the villa. The information was wrong. This guy was not an ordinary person at all. Peter didn't dare to stay here any longer. He quickly fled the villa and disappeared into the night. Chapter 23. Peter joins the gang and gets the dragon spell. Night fell over New York City, Queens. Somewhere in a residential building, Peter's figure flashed in from the second floor. He pulled off his hood and spat out a mouthful of blood. Fuck, bastard. A burst of curses came from his mouth, and he quickly picked up the phone and dialed Tony's contact number. Beep, beep. Soon, the call was connected, and before the other party could speak, Peter suppressed his anger and said, "Fuck, that guy's not an ordinary person at all. Your information is wrong. Do you want to kill me?" On the other side, Tony kept shaking the red wine glass in his hand, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth when he heard Peter's angry voice. "If I wanted to hurt you, you would have died long ago. And I never said that guy was an ordinary person. What on earth do you want to do?" Peter said angrily. "I said, you capture that guy alive for me. This is my goal." "Impossible. That guy is very strong. I'm no match for him." Speaking of this, Peter's tone was a little depressed. After the mutation, although he didn't say it, he was still very happy in his heart. But since he met Tony, he found that everything has changed. Any cat or dog is better than him. In summary, people and ghosts are all showing off, and only he is being beaten. Hearing the disappointment in his words, Tony's smile deepened. "Want to become stronger? I can help you." After the words fell, Peter on the other end of the phone became alert instantly. There is no free lunch in the world, especially when doing business with Tony. "What are the conditions?" he asked carefully. "It's very simple. I plan to form a dark alliance and now invite you to join." Tony took a sip of the red wine in his hand and said slowly, "I'm a good person." Peter said exaggeratedly, "I didn't say you are not a good person. I just asked you to join the Dark Alliance. Consider it." After the words fell, Peter on the other end of the phone fell into a long silence. The Dark Alliance, just listening to the name is not a good place, but think about how he was beaten and fled in embarrassment today. A wave of anger rose from his heart again, and finally Peter gritted his teeth and said, "I agree to join." As soon as these words came out, Tony laughed out loud. After planning for so long, he finally took down this guy. "Congratulations, you made a wise choice." Come to me tomorrow morning and I will give you what you want. After that, Tony couldn't wait to hang up the phone and clicked on the system panel. Name: Tony Stark. Gender: male. Identity: heir of the Shadow Kingdom. Ability: horse charm. Control of Shadow Ninja. Control of Shadow Blade. Number of draws: 1. Dark Alliance member. Spider-Man. Looking at the information on the system panel, a curve appeared at the corner of his mouth, and at the same time, his mind also moved at this moment. Suddenly, a series of black shadows rose from the ground and appeared in front of him, standing respectfully in place. Unlike the Shadow Ninja, the Shadow Thorn Blades have special steel claws on their hands and feet, similar to Wolverine. Their abilities are not as comprehensive as those of the Shadow Ninja, but their combat effectiveness is stronger than that of the Shadow Ninja. It can be said that they are born for fighting. After carefully observing the Thornblade Ninja, Tony nodded with satisfaction, asked them to return to the Shadow Kingdom, and opened the lottery panel. It was an exciting moment again. Even though Tony's state of mind had grown a lot, he still felt a little nervous when facing the lottery wheel. Lottery, he whispered in his heart, and suddenly, the pointer on the roulette wheel spun quickly. Stop. The pointer slowed down, and Tony looked at the pointer eagerly, praying for a powerful ability in his heart. Soon, the pointer stopped. The next second, a dragon-shaped pattern appeared on the roulette wheel, and a dragon roar sounded. Under Tony's gaze, the dragon shadow jumped out of the roulette wheel and instantly drilled into his body. Hot. Extremely hot. Tony felt that the temperature in his body instantly rose to the extreme, and a dragon-shaped group appeared on the surface of his skin, emitting an astonishingly high temperature. After a few minutes, the dragon-shaped pattern disappeared, and Tony returned to normal again. Sir, are you okay? Jarvis' voice sounded. It's okay, don't worry. Tony opened his eyes and said with a smile. Dragon spell, ability, Dragon Blast, can melt everything in the world. This is the information that suddenly popped up in Tony's mind after he obtained the ability of the dragon spell. In order to test the specific power, Tony walked into the underground laboratory, took a look at Reed, who was fanatical, and took out a piece of gold titanium alloy from the material warehouse. This is one of the hardest metals in the Marvel world, generally used in aerospace materials, resistant to high and low temperatures. According to the records of the previous life, the predecessor used gold titanium alloy when making steel armor. After leaving the institute, Tony sat on the balcony and looked at the palm-sized gold titanium alloy. A ball of flame ignited on his palm with a bang. Suddenly, the gold titanium alloy in his hand changed instantly, melting rapidly at a speed visible to the naked eye. In just a few seconds, the gold titanium alloy burned into a pool of molten iron and quickly evaporated into gas. 10 seconds later, the gold titanium alloy in his hand completely disappeared, without even a trace of residue. Hiss. Tony took a breath of cold air, his face full of horror. Although he knew that the dragon spell was powerful, he didn't expect it to be so powerful that the gold titanium alloy could not even hold on for 10 seconds and vaporize directly. It's simply abnormal. But I like it. His heart was filled with excitement. It was not until midnight that Tony calmed down and went to rest. The next morning, Tony was awakened by Jarvis. Sir, there is a young man outside. He said he had an appointment with you. Tony woke up from the bed in a daze. He took a look at the scene projected by Jarvis. Peter was waiting outside the door. Let him in. Yes, sir. Jarvis responded. The door opened, and Peter walked into the villa cautiously. When he came to the living room, Tony yawned and came down from upstairs. He greeted him. By the way, I'm here. Yeah. Peter nodded, a little embarrassed. Tony ignored him. After brushing out the reward, his interest in Peter decreased greatly. He walked into the kitchen and made himself a cup of hot milk. Mr. Tony, you said you could help me become stronger. After sitting for a long time, seeing that Tony had not spoken, Peter could only take the initiative to speak. Yes, wait a moment. Tony was stunned for a moment, but soon realized that this was what he had promised. After drinking the hot milk in his hand, Tony, with a warm stomach, walked towards Peter. Under Peter's nervous eyes, he directly reached out and patted his shoulder. Okay, done. Go and complete the task as soon as possible. Water? Peter was confused. He felt that he was being fooled. Chapter 24. Shield cannot be ignored. "Mr. Tony, what are you doing?" Peter asked in confusion. Tony sat on the sofa in the living room and looked at him calmly. "What? Do you think I'm kidding you? I've already given you the power. Feel it." Hearing this, Peter frowned and calmed down to sense it. With his powerful spider sense, Peter soon found something wrong. It seemed that there was an inexplicable power in his body, which made him inexplicably afraid. The next second, he tried to mobilize that power, and suddenly, a series of black figures appeared beside him, looking at him with scowled eyes. Looking at this scene, Peter's heart skipped a beat and he subconsciously took a few steps back, but soon, he sensed that he seemed to have a special connection with these black shadow ninjas, and that he could control them. Thinking of this, Peter turned his head to look at Tony on the sofa, swallowed his saliva and said, "This is the power you gave me." "Yeah." Tony smiled and nodded. Peter was instantly excited. He still remembered how he was beaten to death by these black shadow ninjas. He never thought that he would be able to control these people one day. With their help, Norman would be nothing. While thinking, Peter excitedly controlled the black shadow ninja and had a lot of fun. Tony watched this scene quietly, without any emotional fluctuations in his eyes. As the controller of the black shadow ninja, Tony can plant the black shadow mark on anyone, allowing them to control the black shadow army. Of course, the final control is still in Tony's hands. Peter is just borrowing it. As long as Tony is willing, the black shadow army will be out of Peter's control in an instant. In this way, not only the power of the Dark Alliance is enhanced, but Peter is also completely trapped in Tony's surveillance. Perfect. Okay, go. Remember to bring Norman back to me. Don't make me wait too long. Okay, Mr. Tony. Peter nodded excitedly and left the villa. After he left, Tony didn't stay in the villa for long and directly contacted a few girls to have fun together. After being busy for so long, he also needs to relax. On the other side, in the SHIELD conference room, Pierce sat at the first seat, and a group of SHIELD elites sat on both sides of the conference room. At this moment, everyone lowered their heads to look at the information in their hands. In the huge conference room, there was no other noise except the sound of flipping through the information. After a long time, Pierce knocked on the table, coughed lightly and said, "You have all finished reading. What do you think of Tony Stark? Mysterious. Very dangerous. Anti-government tendencies cannot be ruled out." SHIELD elites spoke one after another. This is the conclusion they came to after reading the information. Since the Abadia incident, Pierce has been paying attention to Tony and started an investigation into him. In addition to sending Natasha to infiltrate Stark Industries, he has arranged a large number of forces to keep an eye on him at all times. In this era of Skynet, with the power of SHIELD, it is almost no difficulty to monitor a person. Therefore, under the close monitoring of SHIELD, almost all of Tony's actions during this period were exposed under the eyes of SHIELD. Whether it was using the power of the Black Shadow Core or contacting Peter, all of them were recorded in the SHIELD's files. If it were just that, it would be fine, but the scene where Tony took Bruce away was also noticed by SHIELD. SHIELD naturally couldn't help but pay attention to the Green Fat Man's riot in New York. After seeing the power displayed by the Green Fat Man, no one could not be tempted, including SHIELD and Hydra. As the director of SHIELD and a spy for Hydra, Pierce was the first to pay attention. That's why today's meeting was held. It seems that everyone is very clear about Tony's danger. In this case, let's talk about your opinions. Should we arrest him directly, or what? Pierce said slowly, and the SHIELD elites below fell silent at this moment, their faces full of hesitation. Tony is not one of those extraordinary people without any background. Behind him stands Stark Industries. As the top consortium in the United States, the power of Stark Industries is far from as simple as it appears on the surface. Behind Stark Industries, there are at least more than double-digit congressmen, and the relationship between Stark Industries and the military is extremely close. According to rumors, the current US president came to power with the help of Stark Industries. Therefore, it is not a matter of a snap decision to move Tony. There are too many implications. Even SHIELD may not be able to withstand the revenge of Stark Industries. Seeing everyone silent, Pierce also knew what they were worried about. He knocked on the table and said, "Tony is Tony, and Stark Industries is Stark Industries. We are not targeting Stark Industries, but Tony." As long as we can capture Tony before Stark Industries reacts, I believe that the forces behind Stark Industries are not willing to make a big move and fight us to the death. After all, what they need is Stark Industries, not Tony. After the words fell, everyone's eyes moved, and they all understood what Pierce meant. If they arrested Tony in a big way, it would naturally not work. The resistance from Stark Industries would be enough to make them unable to move. But if they arrested Tony secretly, when things became a foregone conclusion, the forces behind Stark Industries would not necessarily fight with S.H.I.E.L.D. to the death. After all, without Tony, Stark Industries is still running as usual, and can still bring them help. At this moment, a black man in the conference room stood up and said, "That's not enough. Once the matter is exposed, our S.H.I.E.L.D. alone may not be able to withstand the pressure from above. After all, Tony now holds 100% of the shares of Stark Industries, and the people above will not let him get into trouble easily. Even if he is caught, he must be released." Hearing this, everyone immediately realized that Stark Industries is now a dictatorial enterprise. Pierce also frowned. "Then Nick, what is your suggestion?" "Find someone to act together," Nick Fury said in a deep voice. As the future director of S.H.I.E.L.D., he thinks about problems more comprehensively. Bruce is a wanted person by the military. General Ross has been trying to capture Bruce. As long as we provide information, General Ross will definitely not miss this opportunity. Join hands with the military. Even if the people above blame us at that time, the military will share some of the pressure for us. Hearing this proposal, Pierce frowned instantly. The reason why he moved Tony was to gain Bruce's power. If the military intervenes, things might get complicated. But seeing that everyone present was excited, he couldn't object, so he could only nod and say, "In that case, let's join forces with the military to carry out a secret operation. This matter must be kept absolutely confidential. No one is allowed to reveal it before the matter is over. Otherwise don't blame me for being rude." Chapter 25, a nearly perfect enhancer. After the meeting, Pierce handed the matter of contacting General Ross to Nick. After everyone dispersed, a figure walked into Pierce's office. His name was Sitwell, and he was Pierce's assistant, and also one of the Hydra spies lurking in S.H.I.E.L.D. "Director, you are looking for me." Sitwell looked respectful. Pierce, who had his back to him, slowly turned around and looked at him and said, "S.H.I.E.L.D. has decided to arrest Tony. You go and inform Bucky. After the operation begins, quickly find Bruce and take him away." "I understand, Director." Sitwell nodded and left the office. Looking at his leaving figure, Pierce felt a little relieved. With the intervention of the military, it is unlikely that he will detain Bruce, so it is best to let someone take Bruce away directly. At that time, even if they find that Bruce is missing, the military can only look for Tony, not him. On the other side, Nick, who accepted the mission, also came to the military area to meet General Ross. After explaining his purpose, Nick waited for General Ross's reaction. Dang, dang, dang. General Ross knocked on the table, looking at Nick with sharp eyes. "Are you telling the truth? Bruce is in Tony Stark's hands?" "Yes, General, the news has been confirmed. It can't be false," Nick Fury affirmed. "So, you are going to take action against Tony? Then do you know how many weapons Stark Industries provides to the military every year? If you touch Tony, do you think the military will sit back and do nothing?" General Ross said in a calm tone, full of coldness in his words, as if he was going to stand up for Tony. Seeing this scene, Nick did not panic, but raised a smile at the corner of his mouth. "General, as far as I know, you have always wanted to capture Bruce, and I heard that you and Stark Industries don't get along well." At this point, Nick did not continue to speak, but the meaning was very clear. Everyone has the same goal, so don't pretend. Where there are people, there are struggles, and the military is no exception. The US military is divided into two factions, the Hawks and the Doves, and the Doves have a better relationship with Stark Industries. As the political enemy of the Doves, the Hawks naturally have no good feelings towards any forces that are close to the Doves. It's fine in normal times, but once something happens, they will not have any scruples. Similarly, the Doves are the same, which is one of the reasons why Nick dared to find General Ross openly. He raised his eyebrows slightly, and the expression on General Ross's face was still indifferent in this case. "Then tell me directly, what do you S.H.I.E.L.D. need me to do?" help us block the pressure from the military, and then Bruce will be handed over to the general. Not enough. General Ross shook his head directly. I can also send people to arrest Bruce, and you don't need to give it to me. If you want me to help you, show your sincerity. General Ross's decisive refusal made Nick secretly curse him as an old fox. Fortunately, he had made preparations before coming, so after General Ross refused, Nick continued to make conditions, the design drawings of the laser gun. After the words fell, General Ross's pupils shrank, and even the action of knocking on the table stopped. The laser gun is an exclusive equipment of SHIELD. It is extremely powerful. The military has been eyeing this firearm, but because it was independently developed by SHIELD, they have no way to make SHIELD hand it over voluntarily. He didn't expect Nick to use this thing as a bargaining chip, which instantly hit his soft spot. Okay, deal, but you have to give me the drawings first. Okay. The two of them successfully negotiated the terms. Nick did not stay any longer and got up to say goodbye and left. With the worries lifted, SHIELD quickly took action. A large number of elite agents were directly dispersed and deployed around Tony's villa, looking for an opportunity to take action. Similarly, after sending Nick away, General Ross quickly summoned his elite team and arranged for them to work with SHIELD to bring Bruce back. SHIELD and the military were taking action, and Tony was enjoying his life without noticing it. Stars, models, and a group of beauties became Tony's prey. In just 3 days, Tony changed more than a dozen groups of beauties to have dinner with him and rewarded himself well. For this reason, Potts's eyes when looking at him have become extremely resentful these days. However, after several days of debauchery, Tony's happy life was forced to end. Reed's research made a breakthrough. In the basement laboratory, Tony walked in quickly. Reed, who was standing in front of the test bench, turned around immediately after hearing the noise. Seeing Tony, a touch of excitement appeared on his face. "Boss, you are here. Come and take a look." Hearing the greeting, Tony walked quickly to the test bench, on which was placed a biological chamber with a little white mouse. The little white mouse in the biological chamber was chewing a hollow iron ball with food inside. At this moment, Reed also introduced it excitedly. "I eliminated the violent factor in that guy's blood, leaving only the enhanced genes. After injecting that guy's blood, this little guy not only strengthened his body in all aspects, but also increased his strength by more than 10 times. If the human body can adapt to this power, then we can mass produce Captain America. No, even stronger than Captain America." Listening to Reed's narration, Tony couldn't help but be a little tempted. One Captain America can overthrow an army. How terrible would it be if there were 100, 1000, or 10,000 Captain Americas? He kept fantasizing in his mind, but Tony soon threw away this unrealistic idea. Not to mention that human experiments have not been carried out yet. Even if the experiments are successful, it is impossible to mass produce Captain America. After all, this power comes from the blood of the green fat man. Even if the green fat man is drained, it is impossible to produce 10,000 Captain Americas. What is the success rate of human experiments, and what are the side effects? Tony quickly calmed down and asked. Hearing this, the excitement on Reed's face also dissipated a lot. According to my prediction, the success rate of human experiments is over 80%. As for the side effects, it will kill the growth potential. According to my research, the violent factor contained in this guy's blood will make him temporarily lose his mind, but it will also allow his strength to continue to increase. In other words, he will continue to get stronger as time goes by. Moreover, after injecting this serum, the strength of the injector is almost fixed, and it is impossible to improve it by any means, and there is no way to transform like that guy. At this point, Reed shook his head regretfully. But Tony was not disappointed. The heights that humans can reach are limited. Except for a few people, most people in the world will never be able to break through the limits of the human body in their lifetime. Excluding the potential, this is almost a perfect enhancer. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.